Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 847th meeting of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee meeting. It looks like we've got all attendance. Councillor Gates, Acting Mayor, I think she just popped out for a second to get some notes, so she shouldn't be long. And I think we've nearly got a full attendance. So visiting councillors, Curtis, Fowler, Wilkinson, Patterson, Martin and Doran, welcome to the meeting. Attendance apologies, we're all here except for Councillor Gates on her way. No leave of absence, so note that. Confirmation of minutes, is there any changes from previous confirmation of minutes? Do we have a mover? Councillor Tozer, seconder. Councillor O'Neill, all in favour? Pass, thank you. Conflict of interest. I know you're here, Councillor Gates. Yours would relate to a particular item, though, Councillor Gates?
Yes. Chairman, mine relates to item 7.1.
Okay, so we might deal with it when we get to 7.1.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We've currently got 4 items starred, 5.1, 6.2, 6.4 and 6.7. Does anyone want to unstar any of those? No, so can we have a mover? Councillor Tozer, Councillor Young.
Oh, sorry, before we do that, though.
Yep.
Item 6.4 kind of pertains to item 6.3.
Yep.
Through you to maybe Councillor Martin. Are you comfortable I know that related to a petition that you tabled. Are you okay for us to move 6.4 before we discuss 6.3 or?
Yeah, I am.
You're okay? Councillor Martin, are you?
Thank you. I'm an observer at this committee, but I mean, I'd certainly love to make sure that I think they're linked together. I would love to see that outcome from the discussion today. So, I mean, I'd love it to both
would
be
you
unstarred,
unstarred or were you happy for it to be left starred at this stage?
I would prefer it to be unstarred if the committee was minded that way.
That's
yep,
great.
happy to unstar it. So we'll move 5.1, 6.2 and 6.7. So can I have a mover?
So
Councillor Tozer, seconder. Councillor Young, all in favour? Carry. We'll now go to 6.1, building capacity in the transport delivery procurement of civil contractor panel. Michael?
Thank you. Through the chair, just while Mitch is making his way to the podium, there's 2 elements in the report that we're really covering today. We're providing council with an overview of our broader capacity building strategy. So this is focused on transport today, but in essence, this strategy is across infrastructure Gold Coast. And one of the components of that strategy is the creation of the Civil Works panel. So it's a small but important component. So we'll give you, I guess, an overview of where we're heading, some of the outcomes and improvements we're seeking in terms of capability and capacity. There will be a more detailed report coming back later in the year, but we thought it was important to give you some context today on where the civil panel fits. But in November, we'll have a more detailed presentation coming back to committee. So I think everyone's met Mitch, so I'll pass over to Mitch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Executive General Manager. Afternoon, councillors. I know it's a fairly busy agenda this afternoon, so I won't try to bore you with too much of my time up here. But as Michael said, thanks for the opportunity to give you an overview of how we're meeting the challenge of delivering a significant transport program over the coming years. Is that the next button? There we go. So I'll quickly cover off on the transport delivery horizon, an overview of our strategic vision, and then a quick update on our significant contracting plan. I know Mr. Prasser has been providing you in this committee with a planner's vision of where our priority areas are and the needs of the network to meet the community's expectations. When you turn that vision into a fairly high-level 10-year program, it looks something like what's on the screen now. I have the challenge of delivering that, And if you look closely, there's a few things you can glean, a few insights. Firstly, there's a thin red bar at the bottom of those columns that represents the emergent work, so things that we didn't know about that we need to rectify rather quickly. The dark grey bar is all of our renewals program, so those things that are renewed or within a program of growth, so things like our active transport network, our roads rehabilitation program, those sorts of things. And then the blue bar is our growth areas where we've got upgrades happening for major projects and the like. So what you'll see there is after the 4 years, so the first 4 years are well identified. Definition is probably still something that we're working through, but they're well identified. And then after the 4 years, you can see that it starts to tail off. As we gain clarity on the condition of our network and the infrastructure within it, I expect that that number will grow. But it's a significant program, so $2.6 billion currently over a 10-year period. It will absolutely take some real well thought out and deliberate approaches to ensure the success of that program. Oh, sorry about that. I think importantly, the deliberate approach through our Executive General Manager's vision and leadership, we've enacted a plan to drive that. And on the board now is our investment framework implementation roadmap. It describes that plan, at least from a capability and capacity build perspective. But what that plan really is a wide-reaching reform of infrastructure Gold Coast to uplift both the decision-making and the infrastructure to ensure we provide that safe and reliable services that meet the community needs both now and into the future. I won't labour too much on all of the elements that are included within it. They're all absolutely critical for the success over the coming years. But the highlighted yellow elements are probably more pertinent to this conversation. So we're in the midst of analysing and defining what that 4 and 10-year program looks like. We're absolutely right now, and part of that short-term procurement and delivery uplift is part of this presentation today. But looking at that project bundling, how we leverage our current ways of delivering to get the best outcomes, and working really hard on defining what that forward program looks like by engaging with the market to bring on board a professional services partner, so a design partner, to start to move that forward program into a more defined state. As we move into Horizon 2, we will start to realise that step change in terms of delivery. So we intend to have on board the collaborative framework partners that will enable us to deliver that growing program of works, but also make sure that that 4-year pipeline is well defined, and that our 10-year program reflects those major risks that we have. And then Horizon 3 by 2027 is really to optimise and improve the efficiency and value for money with our newly formed partnerships. So why do this? I guess it's all about managing risk, ultimately. I'm sure you've heard it before, but the infrastructure sector is very, very hot. So there is a lot happening at the moment, in terms of the construction market at the moment. We've got light rail, we've got the Coomera Connector, we've got the M1 upgrade, significant projects that are creating a strain on the resource pool that's available in southeast Queensland. We've also got the Olympic Games coming, so 8 years away. Lots of preparation and planning that we need to do to make sure that we can make that a success for both the Gold Coast and southeast Queensland. So we need to be really well positioned from a strategic perspective. And that's really around, again, that step change of thinking to change our model of delivery. So we've been quite reactive in terms of how we put together deliverability capability. So things like standalone contracts, lump sum type contracts to deliver standalone projects. We've got panels and things like that in place. but we really need to shift from that thought process to something that is going to entice those big players in the market to come and work with the city. So again, $2.6 billion is a big number, and if we present it in the right way, we can certainly leverage that capability from those major construction markets. To do that, we need to balance out all of those things. So obviously, from a want perspective, we want to make sure. Somebody probably should have told me that we had all of these. Whoops, elements on. To do that, we need to balance out all of those things. So the capability and the capacity, the value for money, the efficiency, that risk sharing, the sustainability and the flexibility to deliver the works. But what it really means at the moment is what's the trade-off of those elements to get the right outcome for the city, to deliver the right work, the right infrastructure at the right time for the right price. So at the moment, we've got a fairly hybrid model in terms of our own internal delivery capability. So we've got an internal construction arm, we've got an internal design capability. We currently leverage a number of individual contracts, both in that design and construct space. And again, we are moving to meet the immediate need to pull as many levers as we can in terms of standing up our civil works panel, working with our partners to provide more efficiency, more gain from those partnerships. But ultimately, we are looking at what are those long-term collaborative partnerships that we can put in place that exist out there that will help us secure that element or that portion of the infrastructure sector that will meet our community's needs into the future. So to the previous slide, this graph depicts our current state and that plan journey we expect to take. So in the first column, 24-25, you can see at the bottom of that column, there's two little slivers. That is our design capability. So through our internal design arm, as well as what we leverage from our consultants in the sector. The yellow is our internal construction. The blue is our individual contracts and panel contracts that we leverage, that we currently have within our remit, and our green at the top of that bar is representing the civil works panel that we intend to bring on later this financial year. The main shift into 25-26 is the introduction of the grey bar at the bottom, and that is our design panel that we intend to bring on as a collaborative partnership to enable us to start to bring that forward pipeline forward, give us some definition so that we can build a framework and entice those large construction partners to come on in board in 26-27 as we develop that commercial model, work out exactly what it is that we need from the sector, and then in 27-28 they come up and are fully optimised and running at complete capacity for us. So this approach gives us many benefits. Obviously, a partner that provides capability and capacity goes a long way to securing delivery success, but there's many other benefits such as optimisation and efficiency in procurement, design, administration opportunities to learn and integrate contemporary ways of working in the engineering sector, and perhaps most importantly, that management of risks and the insights that we are able to then garner from our infrastructure to ensure that we deliver on the community's expectations from a service and reliability perspective.
Mitch, just through the chair, I guess to break that down, we really need to double our planning and design efforts over the next 3 years. So we need to, in essence, do 2 years' work every year on status quo. So the only way for us to transition from, this 1 year out, 2 year out max definition, as in project properly defined, scoped, designed, market ready, is to significantly uplift our planning and design capability. So the bringing on of the engineering partnerships, the bringing on of more capability around asset management and planning, these are the enablers, because until we do that early work and we get better understanding of why we're doing the project, what is the optimum time, we clearly understand the benefits and it's appropriately defined, so that when we bring you a budget, we have a defined scope. We don't have an order of magnitude estimate, and you've got greater confidence, particularly in the 4-year horizon. So what Mitch showed in that earlier slide as we look at the stacks going forward, when you step outside the renewal program, where we've got confidence from a high-level program level, beyond 3 years, project definition is very, very low. And that's because we haven't done that early options assessment. We haven't done those, environmental, geotech, all those elements to have those projects properly defined, clearly scoped, so that we can go to market, and we can also change the way we deliver those projects. So shifting from projects to programs, scale, capability, capacity. So that transition, particularly the next 2 years, is quite critical, and it's across all asset classes. It's not just transport. So we'll provide some more context around that, but yeah, in essence, we need to double our historic outputs over the next 3 years every year to get to a 4-year fully defined rolling capital program, which is really where we want to be.
Well said, Mr. Carter, thanks. So, look, just a quick overview in terms of those strategic delivery horizons. So, like I said, define, design that capability uplift framework this year. Get that development of the procurement plan, the commercial model, contract framework, all of that sort of stuff next year. And it sounds like it's a small thing, but it's a massive amount of work, as Michael just alluded to. We've got to get that forward plan, that design element complete, so that we can engage the constructor and really entice them to come along and do work for us. And then in 26, 27, revising all of those elements and getting that market engagement, and through that market engagement, refine that, and then establish that construction partnership. And then 27, 28, we are operating, and we are looking at how we optimise that relationship and that partnership to get the best outcomes for the city. Really quickly,
Councillor Hamill, I think.
Oh, sorry.
Do you want a question?
It's okay, Chair. I'll come back to the slide.
Sure. Councillor Gates, did you have a question earlier?
Well, I just in response to the EGM's advice there that we need to double the program,
Design.
double the design.
So through the chair, what we have in our forward capital program, if we think about the gateway as the different gates in a project, when a project is defined, it's effectively gone through gate 2. So there's been an options assessment. We've got a clear understanding of the approval requirements, land acquisitions, environmental, etc. We've done a cost estimate, which is based on a scope of work. We have some confidence around schedule and risk. What we're doing is we're not doubling the amount of projects. What we're doing is improving the level of definition of maturity of the project. So one of the key things that organisations and infrastructure roles struggle is it's complete the design, construct the following year. So what we're looking to do is, with the same total capital investment and the same number of projects, we're effectively going to get double the amount of projects in the bottom drawer that are actually construction ready and de-risked. So we're compressing and bringing forward all that future work. If we just stuck to the status quo, we wouldn't be starting detailed design on these projects for 2027 until 2026. We're going to do them much earlier, and that will give us the ability to not only provide more confidence around deliverability, but also go to the market with a defined pipeline of work that we've got high confidence that the projects are real and deliverable, and we run that way. So it's not doubling the CapEx program.
So the panel will include the necessary people to ensure that we can double the
partners. So there's multiple prongs. So the engineering partnerships are about bringing that extra capacity on to double our engineering design for the known future projects. Obviously, there's a lot of work to do around the asset management and renewal, so making sure we really understand asset risks, and we've done our condition assessments and we convert that then to projects and design, so getting ahead of the game. And then similarly with procurement, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. So the civil panel is more for the small, medium programs of work, which will suit. whether we end up with 2 proponents, for example, that are trusted, pre-qualified contractors, they'll be well suited to a certain type of work, and they can look at multiple projects. So rather than us going to market for individual transactions, we bring on a partner, we roll a program, and we work with them. And similarly for the more major projects, which Mitch talked about, the tier 1s, they're more suited to larger scale. So how do we define those? Very similar to what we've just done with the treatment plants, with the infrastructure delivery partner. We've done a lot of work with PSP to bring forward that level of definition and go to market effectively with a year's work ready to go to the IDP.
Thank you. That fully explains. Thanks so much.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, look, thanks. Michael's probably covered a lot of what's on that slide in terms of, yeah, the Civil Works panel is designed as an addition to our current remit of capability. So it's really there to help deliver the smaller works, the ad hoc work that comes up. We're looking to appoint 2 to 4 contractors. It's out to market at the moment. We expect to deliver that, over the next 3 years in circa $90 million out of that program. There's a couple of options there for an extension. That will be dependent on how we go with our long-term collaborative frameworks and what we get out of those partnerships. And in terms of a time frame, you'd be aware that the significant contracting plan came to council last November. Like I said, we're out to market at the moment. Evaluation to commence next month. The first package is being priced as part of that tender request, and then we're anticipating spending in the order of $20 million this financial year through this Civil Works panel. I think that's it. Don't know where my last slide's gone. It's not there. Anyway, that's all I had. Happy to take any questions. There's the last slide.
Councillor Hamill.
Could we go back to slide 7?
That'll be a challenge, but I'll see.
Oh, God. Yep. So I was interested on this one because as we look to the future and we talk about the Civil Works panel and the delivery partner, and that's the real big deal, is 26, 27, 27, 28 when we get into that stage of things. So the yellow, which is our internal ability to construct,
Yep.
and I acknowledge this is just transport program, but I'm going to guess this is across the board.
Well, yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that's good. So my read, if I read that graph, it's pretty well acknowledging that our level of ability for internal construction maxes out at that, and instead of going down the path of trying to increase internal ability, we are definitely heading down the path of an external delivery model with this, because we realise we can't boost internally.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, look, I suppose, I touched on earlier that the infrastructure sector has, because it's really quite hot at the moment, and the drain from those large projects is putting a real resource strain on us being able to recruit, get the right people in the organisation. We don't expect that is going to reduce over the coming years. So for us to grow the internal workforce and be competitive is probably at this point in time not seen as the best way forward. So I did mention before that, as our program builds, we may actually end up paying more for things than if we delivered them slower. But the need is about when do we want them and what's the right things to build at the right time. But obviously there's only a certain amount of capacity in the market, and if we start to want to bring more work forward, then we're competing with other projects that also want to bring their work forward. Hence, the contractor gets the opportunity to define what those terms are. But there's not an expectation for us to meet the increase in our program through our internal workforce.
And Chair, maybe I very much understand that it's just we've always been given a slightly different version of that. In maybe the previous term before the current EGM, we were given a model that we need to hire more people and we have to do this and do that, and yet the real world is every time we advertise to go find new project managers or superintendents, we get next to no applications, and we're lucky to find one person out of it because we don't pay the same as private enterprise does. So it's the first time we've really been clearly told there is a kind of max ceiling that internally we can deliver, and the only way to meet our future CapEx program and renewal program is to look at these other models.
If I may, through the chair, just to add to Mitch's comment, the other thing that this demonstrates is how valuable internal construction capacity is. So this very much demonstrates our strategy to retain it. I think there will be capacity and capability uplift, but that will be around we deliver the projects, particularly around schedule, and we make sure that we've got the right capabilities to ensure that that circa 110 million is delivered, because as projects get more defined, that time to construction and the ability to get efficiencies and scale up will improve as well. But to Mitch's point, we will not meet doubling the capital program requirement through an uplift in our internal capability.
Chair, I think that's a really good point from the EGM, that it's not like internal construction is disappearing. It just means we can direct those resources to projects we know we are capable of delivering and that we have the skill set to deliver. My next question was, so lump sum contract obviously drops off big time. So what's wrapped up in that, and why the decline in lump sum contracts?
Yeah, so I don't have the exact numbers, but it is many individual contracts that we let for individual projects. It's not an efficient way to deliver the service, particularly when we've got a really clearly defined forward program. So to be able to reduce the number of transactions that we have, reduce the oversight, leverage off the market sector, the capability that's out there, it's a far more efficient way to deliver our services.
Yeah.
Hence why we see that blue bar drop down to
so
less.
Mitch is a contextual example of that instead of needing 10 procurement managers to oversee 10 different contracts, we could have one procurement manager overseeing one contract. That's a bigger contract.
That's one of of many benefits. Yep.
Councillor Tozer? No.
So I'm trying to work out how to word my question the right way. Not that long ago, there was a significant pathway project in my division, it was in excess of $400,000, partly funded by local area works, partly funded by the whole of city through a network connection. It fit in with the network's planning, and it was quite a good project. But in the process of going through that project, which took some time to devise, there was an inordinate amount of design, and it was a simple pathway on the side of a street. And my question is, while we're adding to the design requirements and resources at the upper end, is there any plans to potentially lower our risk appetite or diminish our risk appetite such that we can take more less design outcomes in those lower value contracts? Having gone through this process of delivering a $400,000 pathway, it's probably the most expensive pathway I've ever delivered in my division, and it doesn't actually go that far. And it makes me feel sad that we spent so much money devising it. My question really is, in doing this big project packaging, is there a corresponding proposal to free up resources at the lower end and kind of come up with quicker and less engineered solutions that just connect things like pathways?
Through the chair, there's a couple elements to that. So the civil panel, I guess that sort of work certainly feeds into the civil panel, but probably the more broader conversation there is around engineering standards and what is fit for purpose, and the perception of gold plate for, low risk elements. So we have 10 different initiatives running in this change for Infrastructure Gold Coast. One of those is looking at engineering standards. So whilst it's not specifically covered in the presentation today, it's not lost on us, engineering standards, and that's from fit for purpose. It covers risk, but it also covers repeatability, because the opportunities for us in having standard design solutions for certain infrastructure classes is huge as well, which will then play into these delivery frameworks, which obviously there's a standard way we build a pathway a toilet block, etc., etc. So to answer your question, it won't be lost. It'll be picked up in the engineering standards review, and there'll be more information coming back around the scope and scale of that review as we go forward.
I'm so sorry. Help me understand what engineering standards is. When you use the word, I've got an idea in my head, but let's clarify.
Yeah, so if you come back to footpaths, things that define what strength of concrete, what width, what depth, finishing standards. So where you have a different level of service, so do we have the same footpath design for a highly urbanised area as we do in a remote rural?
Totally agree.
So then,
and at the moment we have the same, and we're suggesting that maybe we have unique standards.
So the conversation then to have is from an engineering durability perspective. Obviously, we design assets to have minimum whole of life costs for their defined whole of life.
Yes.
So there's an engineering aspect, but then there's also a level of service conversation. So, are you happy to have a 1.2 metre versus a 3 metre? What is the consequence? What is the service standard for rural versus urban? And things like
do
that.
you mean asking those questions to the councillor for a council or originated project, or do you mean asking those questions to a panel of engineers?
There'll be engagement, but it's about standardising the solutions. So we've just gone through a process where we've looked at the toilet blocks, and there'll be conversation around that today. So based on a service standard, what is the right solution? Is that endorsed from both a technical and from a customer perspective? And then that becomes effectively what we would adopt for a certain application. So we don't want generic solutions for Division 4 versus Division 9, etc., but what we do want is to have very extreme clarity for a certain asset class with a certain application. What's our standard design? And it's the very same principle with our development applications. Obviously, when we issue operational works, there's very specific standard design solutions that developers follow, and we would be pursuing the same approach internally.
Yeah, I've got that. I think the reason I asked the question is because this particular project was, like I said, probably the biggest pathway project that we've delivered in some time, and the standards, it actually consumed council resources that would have otherwise been applied to the Ocean Way, because the same team who designed concrete pathways in Division 9 are going to be working on the concrete pathways on the beach, and yet my pathway, whilst it's important to my division, it might have 3 people walking on it a day. The Ocean Way is going to have 10 people, and I feel like our project consumed time and energy and resources. And the reason I asked the question is it sounds like this is a really important body of work that we're doing. Have we thought about lowering those standards? And it sounds like we have. This engineering standards review is potentially going to help us redeploy resources to those more important projects, so these projects can be kind of done a bit more MacGyver-y. Use MacGyver as an informal way.
So through the chair, what we'll do, we'll challenge those standards and are they fit for purpose? And it may or may not result in relying, but it's really having that open review. Is this suitable in terms of durability, cost, service? Is it the right solution, or are we actually over-investing? The other element I'll quickly touch on is also with this approach, our historic approach of going in and doing an individual segment of a pathway in an area. If we have more designs and we have an agreed strategy and we're rolling out footpath programs and active transport strategies, actually can we go and roll a program, and can we do it geographically and do 10 footpaths in a program of work with a single provider? And what is the economies of scale that we get through our suppliers through that, which is what the civil panel will also potentially provide.
Yeah, okay. I think as I went through this project, things like little retaining walls, like that ended up adding several $1,000s to the project. And I get why you'd put a retaining wall in a high urban area, but in a rural residential area where I was just trying to connect a gap in the network, those retaining walls could have just been better. And, it took a bunch of engineers to design a retaining wall solution that was actually unnecessary. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gates, did you have a question first?
Oh, yeah, I'm just a little confused through you, Chair. Is the panel already in place? It's not.
No.
Because I had a query in, and I'm certain it came back that it was out to tender to the panel.
It's currently out to market through you, Chair. It's currently out to market, the Civil Works panel, correct?
But mine was relating to a specific project on Old Coach Road, which is scheduled for construction 24-25. And I'm sure it indicated that it was out to the civil panel, but it's not.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I'm not sure. I'll have to have a look at the email. But at the moment, we've got a number of panel providers. So there may be just a little confusion with the way it's been written to you. So we have a miscellaneous concrete panel, which has a number of suppliers on it that do a lot of footpath works for us. I'd have to take it on notice and get back to you about.
Oh, it doesn't matter. I just thought the panel was already in place, but I thought this was actually advising us of the establishment of a panel.
No,
so there'll be a tender process to invite expressions of interest to be panel members.
Through you, Chair. Yes, that's
Councillor
correct. So
Hamill, and then
And is that out at the moment? It is.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hamill.
Chair, I got a similar response to Councillor Gates, and the feedback was that it was a project to be delivered in Q3 or Q4, so after Christmas, and that it is notionally wrapped up in possibly the release of Package 2 or Package 3. So it might have just been that it may form part of one of the projects that's in one of those bundles. So that's still at the end of the year. That could possibly be there.
So you can take a notice and look into that.
Chair, so I just wanted to check. I'm picking up on Councillor Toe's engineering standards question, but so I've got half a dozen small footpaths being delivered through the minor works program, and they're all ones that instead of going through full detailed design, we're just using a standard drawing and giving to the contractor. Is that an example of what you were getting at of engineering standards? It's still a footpath, the same width, same concrete, blah, 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 but instead of needing detailed design for a straight piece of footpath, we've just given it to the contractor and said, here's a standard drawing, go for gold, and saved ourselves 18 months.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Yep.
Councillor Young.
So my understanding with the tender that's out now for the establishment of the CWP, the panel, is that it includes a few jobs, and the tenders are being asked to respond to include attention to delivering those particular projects. So that may be covering Councillor Gates, and certainly hoping that covers one of mine. I wanted to ask about slide 7, which Councillor Hamill's asked about, and I was just interested in what you've identified there as internal construction, the capacity. Is that accurate?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, across the whole program, yes, that's about what they deliver on an annual basis.
Right. Interesting. Thank you. I don't have any more questions. I think it's a great initiative.
Thank you, Mitch. Michael. Any other questions from the floor? Yeah. I think just moving forward, we know there's a lot of work we need to do and we need to get more effective. I know since Michael's come on board, understanding where each of these projects are at, it's really important to understanding at the very beginning to ensure we deliver at the right time, the most efficient way of doing it. I think this forms a way of becoming more agile and as well as get in advance of future projects. So did you have another question or would you like to move it, Councillor Hamill? Move Councillor Hamill, second Councillor Young. All in favour? Carry. Yeah. Did you want to talk to it, Councillor Hamill? My apologies. So 6.3, Old Coach Road, Stage 2, Bermuda Street Extension. Nick?
Through the chair, as Nick's waking his way up, we've got a presentation on Old Coach Road to really take you through, I guess, the history of the project, and we've done a review of the investment. Nick will go through some of the drivers, but obviously significantly increased cost estimate for the project. As we will with all gateway reviews, we revisit the project and we look at cost and benefits and reconfirm that that project is appropriate to progress. The team's done some good work and we'd like to present some alternative options on the Old Coach Road, so I'll hand over to Nick.
Thanks, EG and Michael. And through the chair, today's report is on Old Coach Road, Stage 2 upgrade. The purpose of the report is to advise Council on the status of the project and the outcomes of a recent assessment undertaken by City Administration, and to seek Council endorsement on an alternative solution that still provides similar outcomes at a much reduced cost over the medium term. So Old Coach Road is a sub-arterial road in the southern part of the city in Reedy Creek and Tallebudgera Valley. The southern section of the road has a rural configuration, as you can see there in the photo. In 2015, we upgraded the northern section of Old Coach Road, in 2019, at a cost of around about 15 million, upgraded that to an urban standard, as you can see there in the photo, and then Stage 2 relates to the southern section of Old Coach Road. This project has been subject to many planning studies going back to 1996. We've looked at the records by both the state and the city. It's been referred to as a number of names: Old Coach Road Stage 2, Old Coach Road Connector, Bermuda Street Extension. So it's been around for quite a while. In 2019, a business case was developed, which did include a concept design and benefit cost analysis. The P90 order of cost that was identified through the business case was $109 million and had a benefit cost ratio of 5.7, which was quite healthy, with the majority of the benefits being travel time savings on the state network. And the diagram there shows the preferred configuration that Council endorsed in May 2020. So you can see there, that's the Council endorsed resolution. In essence, Council did endorse the preferred configuration, but its progression through to construction was subject to securing a delivery partnership with TMR. And then subsequent 4-year capital works programs have included Old Coach Road Stage 2. The latest one, 24-25 to 27-28, included an $80 million investment in that project. Subsequent to May 2020 Council resolution, we did write a letter to the federal government, to the Minister for Infrastructure and Transport, seeking a funding partnership. The Minister did respond, advising that a detailed business case would need to be prepared in partnership with the state, and then submitted to Infrastructure Australia for their prioritisation before the Australian government would consider any funding contribution. With regards to liaison with the Department of Transport Main Roads, TMR has been actively engaged in quite various forums, including executive communications, through letters and through a series of meetings with senior TMR planners. Through that communication, TMR has advised that they are now signalising the intersection of Tallebudgera Creek Road, Old Coach Road in 24-25. So that does address the safety concern that Old Coach Road was intending to address. But overall, TMR's position has been quite agnostic towards a delivery partnership. TMR have said that their resourcing focus at the moment is on the M1 upgrades, which are occurring, the Coomera Connector and the Gold Coast Light Rail project. And for TMR to really consider funding formally, they require a lengthy and costly project assurance framework process to be undertaken, which even if that was to be undertaken, and that would cost many millions of dollars to do, many years to do, there's still no guarantee that funding will come from the state government.
I'm happy to take questions as we go. So, Councillor Tozer.
Just on that previous slide, you talked about the signalisation of the. That's actually a better slide. Don't go back a slide. That's actually better. You talked about TMR committing to signalising the crossing down the bottom there. You and I have talked about this, Nick, and it's not going to be that sort of signalised crossing, but when is it expected to be delivered?
Yeah, so it's actually signalising existing intersection. The proposal for the ultimate upgrade of Old Coach Road Stage 2 was to create a 4-way intersection.
Yep.
As you can see there in the diagram on the slide, what they're proposing to do is signalise the existing intersection, which is a little bit further up.
T, isn't it?
So there'll be 2 offset signalised intersections.
Yes.
What's happening at the moment is, as with a lot of T intersections across the city, as population grows, traffic grows, motorists are finding it difficulty turning out of side streets onto major roads. And what was happening on Old Coach Road is motorists are just finding it difficult to find a gap in the traffic to turn right. Because of that, then we had queuing back up along Old Coach Road, up the hill, and we had people starting to take unacceptable risks. And because of those safety issues, the Department of Transport Main Roads have found funding in what they call the Safer Roads Sooner program, which is in essence the revenue that they receive from red light cameras and speed cameras. They put into a pool and then they invest that money in making roads safer. So they've accessed that funding pool. I don't know how much it is, but I think it's several $1 million, and they're signalising that intersection.
Yep. So
this financial year.
So this financial year is
Correct.
design, or is this financial
This financial
year
year, it's in their forward program called Q-Trip for 24-25 investment in construction.
So construction. This financial year.
Correct.
Okay, that's a good outcome.
Councillor Gates.
Thank you. Through the chair, I think those up the front will be aware of my opposition to this work for a long time because I feel it's a state responsibility. Have there been traffic counts ever done and measured congestion? Or was this always all just about safety? I mean, when you look at the view we've got here of all that rural land and not high density living adjacent, what's the background to how this ever became a project that might cost somewhere near $200 million?
Sorry, through the chair. Some of the answers to that question will be coming up in the presentation, but to quickly answer it, yes, safety is number one. That was the number one driver for the project.
That's going to be addressed by the installation of traffic lights.
That will be definitely addressed as part of what we're here today to propose to council. And the other issues were capacity related in terms of providing a new connection to the M1 through the interchange there, which will then help redistribute traffic from the other interchanges which are already under operating pressure. So it was about two things: safety and connectivity to address capacity in the network.
And you'll be sorry.
May I just add to that? There's 10,000 children that attend school within 1 to 2 kilometres of that section. 10,000 children attend school. No, there isn't any living space, but there's 10,000 children attending school within 2 kilometres of that. And so it's the residential areas are travelling to here to get their kids to school.
Councillor O'Neill, we'll take this one and then we'll get to the end of the presentation and then we'll take more questions.
It doesn't matter that I hadn't finished, but anyway, keep going.
My apologies. Do you want to? No, I'm happy to continue. Councillor Gates?
No, I'm done now.
You sure?
Yeah.
I'll just follow up on Councillor Gates's. Has some traffic counts been done recently, Nick? Because yes. I should imagine, just with what's been going on in the M1 upgrade, that the traffic count has increased dramatically on that road.
So yes, traffic has increased. You can see the trend from about 2021 onwards. Over the last few years, it's gone from 6,000 to 7,000 vehicles a day to about 9,000 vehicles a day. The reason for that would obviously, you can correlate that to the construction on the M1. Motorists are, in the local area, motorists are trying to avoid the M1. They would otherwise travel along the M1. They're avoiding that and now using Old Coach Road.
And just
9,000.
And just one more question, just about what we just talked about. With the TMR's solution to signalise Old Coach Road onto Tally Creek Road, can you see any issues with that, with queuing as well? Because there'll be with the two offset signalised intersections there.
Look, creating a four-way intersection is obviously the ideal solution. But putting the signals in and having two offset signals intersections, it does address the safety issues. The good thing about traffic signals is they can be controlled through the Traffic Management Centre. What it does provide is it provides confidence for motorists turning right out of Old Coach Road. It will reduce congestion a little bit, but there will be congestion there. But as I said, with traffic signals, you can control them much better than, say, a priority controlled intersection.
And it's a definite no from TMR about co-funding for a 4-way intersection and upgrading Tally Creek Road to suit that project?
So what I'm saying is TMR have never said no. TMR have said their resourcing focus at the moment is on other significant city shaping projects. And for them to seriously consider funding it, we would have to follow what we call a project assurance framework process, which could take up to 5 years to do.
And they never asked for that before when we started. You know, we're talking about this project since 2020.
Yes, so we've been liaising with them since that time.
Unbelievable.
We'll continue presentation, take calls. Yeah,
I'll go back to that one. Sorry. So since 2020, we have progressed the design work. So we have now come up with what we call a preliminary design. So a lot of work's gone into that. A lot of surveys, ecological surveys have been done, geotechnical, cadastral surveys, a lot of hydraulic analysis, a lot of coordination with the Department of Transport, Main Roads and utility providers, and some initial contact with property owners. So you can see the preliminary design there in the diagram. Down. So we've completed the preliminary design, and the P90 estimate for that is $207 million. So that is a significant increase from the business case. The business case was 109, so nearly double. And there are a few reasons for that. Obviously, inflation and rising market costs. As Mr. Braddo mentioned before, it is a hot labour market with both labour and materials supply chain. As part of the prelim design, we also identified that there was a requirement for a 3-span bridge over Oyster Creek to facilitate wildlife movements. And there are significant, as we progress our maturity and intelligence with our design, we've worked out that we need additional earthworks, pavement standards based on geotechnical information and Department of Transport Main Roads requirements on Tallebudgera Creek Road. And obviously there are significant increases in some of the on-costs, such as public utility services, land values, and vegetation offsets.
We'll let Nick finish presentation. We'll come back. Yeah, we'll come back to the end.
Yeah.
That's okay. Thank you.
So the design team did do some value engineering on this. It looked at geometric design speed reductions, making some rationalisations to the cross section. Unfortunately, all that did was reduce the cost by about 5%. And the problem with doing that is it actually probably meant that TMR would be even less likely to provide funding because it didn't meet particular standards. So, is there a question now?
Is that finished the presentation? Yep.
No, I haven't finished the presentation, but...
I'll happy to go to the end of the presentation, then we'll take questions. Thanks.
So, we've looked at this and looked at what can we do to reduce costs but still meet the benefits that we intended from the project. So what we're proposing is to split Old Coach Road Stage 2 into an A and a B. So Stage A involves upgrading the existing road on the existing 2-lane alignment to improve its safety. So we have undertaken a road safety audit along that road, and we've identified a whole suite of mitigation measures. The low complex measures are already going to be actioned. So a lot of those things about trimming trees, putting in guideposts and signs and lines will be undertaken. And then the bigger project is upgrading that to an urban standard, similar to what we did to the northern part of Old Coach Road, as you can see there in the photos. So what this allows us to do, it enables us to deliver the current budget allocation, deliver the project within the current budget allocation, and provide safety benefits in the short to medium term. And then Stage 2A also includes what we call Option 2, which is also Stage Option 1, plus also looking at putting in a 2-lane road that will link Old Coach Road with Oyster Creek Drive, so you can see the blue arrow on the diagram. So that will form part of our options assessment, moving Stage 2A forward. And stage 2B is the ultimate design, and it will be delivered in the long term with Queensland Government funding and it being led by the Department of Transport and Main Roads. And in the meantime, the corridor for the ultimate, for the stage 2B, will be preserved. So we have done some revised traffic modelling. So you can see there, so it's 8,000 vehicles a day currently use the southern section. We put in option 2A, which is, put in stage 2A option 1, which is upgrading existing. So traffic volumes do increase a little bit, but that's just background traffic growth. But as you can see, as you put that 2A option 2 link in, it does draw traffic along to use the southern section of Old Coach Road to get to the interchange. And then obviously stage 2B, the much larger significant project, then draws more traffic again. So the proposed way forward is to now undertake the planning and options assessment for stage 2A this financial year, using existing funding in the approved 24-25 CapEx program. The preferred solution for 2A will then be presented to Council for consideration, and if approved by Council, we'll progress that to a market-ready design, similar to what Mr. Braddo talked about before, having that ready to get through Gate 2 and having it ready for delivery. So that's subject to Council approval, obviously. But we believe that the combined cost of stage 2A options will be substantially lower than the current $207 million P90 estimate, and will correlate much closer to the existing allocation in the program. So it recommends as follows: receive the report. We talk there about seeking endorsement for stage 2A, stage 2B solution. We also preserve the corridor, and that we commence planning for the project in 24-25. And then at the conclusion of that planning, that we provide a report back to Council for consideration with a recommended solution, which will also include much better intelligence on a defined scope and a cost.
Councillor Gates.
Thank you. I note that you suggested it's likely to be a lot less than the 207 million. Do you have any idea of what we're agreeing to move forward with at this point in time before the absolute costs come back to Council?
We have an idea of the order of costs.
And can you please share that with us?
So we still have a lot of work to do. So it probably it will be significantly less, but I'd hate to put a figure on it, because sometimes when you put dollar figures on things, they don't become apparent.
Yeah, through the chair, if I can try and take Nick out of the hot seat here. Like we've discussed this a lot. The idea of the 2A extension between Old Coach Road and Oyster Creek Drive is so premature that the costings of that we don't know. So we're very reluctant to do that, and I suppose that's what part of the recommendation here is: we actually mature that, bring it to a level of maturity, take it through the P3M process, and we'll bring that back to you. But I suppose the commitment that we could give you is that we can do the work to do what I've just talked about within the current budget allocations.
So that's $500,000.
Yeah, and so we're not going to spend a lot of money to progress the design comparative to the overall cost, and then we'll be able to come back with a realistic proposal for you guys to evaluate.
Thank you. And through the chair, can you just tell me, I mean, for me, as the representative for Foxwell Road, with a couple of years ago we were advised there were 42,000 vehicles a day travelling down Foxwell Road. So it's somewhat distressing for me to see those residents sitting in a traffic jam from the time they drive out of their driveway until they get to the M1 at peak hours. And that's why I asked if there's been any modelling about delays or the like, and I didn't see that in the report, but So only traffic counts have been taken, not congestion delays?
Yes, so we've got all that data. We've got traffic volumes. We've got information about crashes, congestion hotspots, and we've also done the traffic modelling for the project.
Okay, so how are we prioritising? We've only got one pot, one bucket of money. How are we prioritising the areas of the city that are most urgently in need of work?
So yes, we do have a prioritisation framework. Safety is the number one priority. So this project is driving safety outcomes.
Sorry, I thought from the presentation that had been addressed. So I agree that safety is the prime concern. I'm not querying that, not at all. But I felt from the report that you've presented to us that safety was being addressed by the installation of the signals.
Through the chair, a road safety audit has been undertaken, and all the low-cost recommendations from the audit are being implemented as we speak, such as vegetation clearing and guideposts. All the higher cost or the high complexity elements or recommendations, such as guardrail, and a lot of the guardrail requires curve widening, things like lighting, they will all be addressed as part of the much larger upgrade of Old Coach Road.
Okay. So my question remains, how are we prioritising?
So if I can, through the chair, to add to Nick's answer, look, a lot of the cost on this project, you're right, the traffic risk at the intersection is being addressed by the signalisation, but you'll see that we had the two parallel pitches where we're going to upgrade the road standard, and that's where a lot of the cost of this project has gone, and that's come through the road safety audit that was actually triggered as part of this project as well. So that's where you'll see a lot of the cost for the project, and I suppose the priority has come from the safety audit saying that all of these things are necessary to bring the road up to the safety standards we're looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, can I just add, I guess to address, once we've completed the options assessment, the Gate 2 will have a clear scope, cost and benefit, and part of that prioritisation against city priorities will be able to be articulated once we've done the options assessment. So approval from the committee and from council to progress this and complete the stage, which Nick and Mark have just been talking about, we can then come back, Councillor Gates, and articulate from a benefit cost perspective where this sits with the broader program.
Thank you. And because it was originally an extension of Bermuda Street, is there any likelihood of any state funding at all?
Look, I'm not ruling that out, but a significant piece of funding from the state, unlikely, but there could be some grants, such as some grant, Transport Infrastructure Development Scheme grants, federal roads recovery grants that we could tap into.
And have there been fatalities that would
Yes,
allow
there is.
black spot funding?
Well,
Right. So it would qualify for black spot funding from the federal government as well?
No, I would have to look at that. So the northern section, the stage 1 section where we upgraded in 2019, there was a fatality there. And there have been fatalities at the southern intersection that the Department of Transport and Main Roads are signalising. That's the reason why they've secured the Safer Roads Sooner funding to signalise it. But there are other crashes that are occurring along the southern section, a significant amount of crashes occurring there.
Thanks for the information.
Thank you. Councillor Neal.
Thanks, Chair. I just find it really hard to understand TMR. I suppose that's not a strange statement to make, but I thought that they had actually looked at the four-way intersection because there's been some talk of it through the state member in my area. So is there some sort of political will that we can maybe write to the Transport Minister to put some pressure on him to put some money forward for this four-way intersection? Because that's a much better outcome than what they've decided to do.
Through the chair, look, There was communication with the Department of Transport Main Roads with the Minister previously. There's no reason why we can't do that again. I'll just take it back to the preliminary design. So, as we all know, creating a four-way signalised intersection is the ideal solution. But to do that, you really have to, as you can see with the diagram, you have to realign Old Coach Road. Significant cost. You also have to do some realignment with some of the other legs, and to get it up to proper standard, we have been advised that that intersection needs to be raised by 3 metres to get the flood immunity. So it's on face value, signalising a four-way looks quite easy, but when you get into it, to do that, it would be a significant investment.
And you think that's why TMR has been agnostic about it, just because of the money?
It's that they've set aside funds to address the safety issue, and they believe what they're investing in will solve that safety issue.
It's a shame. I think I'd like to add a recommendation that we write to the Transport Minister, you know, seeking some extra funding.
Councillor Young.
Thanks, Nick. If you could leave this slide, I'll ask questions around this. You've got traffic modelling there. At what point is that on the network, please?
Through the chair, that's the southern section. So that would be the bit sort of north of Tullabudgera Connection Road.
Right. So that increase depicts, traffic coming off Tullabudgera Creek Road and using this connection instead to get up to the motorway. Is that
correct?
Right?
Yep.
And then it would go via the Oyster Creek Drive realignment, is that it?
Correct.
That's
Yep.
the blue one?
Yes.
Okay. So it's taking it off our road and putting it, which takes it up to the motorway, Tullabudgera Creek, and that
Up to exit 89.
Just south of there is Copley Sports Field, and just to the east of there is St Andrews.
Lutheran College.
Thank you. So we're not really lightening the load at the state-controlled road intersections, are we?
No.
Right. Hence the lack of interest from the
Yeah,
state.
so the interchange that was upgraded, exit 87, as part of the M1 upgrade, has been designed to take a southern link from Old Coach Road.
Right. I'm just trying to tease out the propensity of the state government to contribute, and it doesn't look very strong to me, given that we're not going to be alleviating traffic on their network through this work.
There will be benefits to the state network as part of the project.
Well, we've got to obviously push that case.
Councillor Tozer, and I'll come back to Hamill.
Thank you. So, just so I'm very clear and people watching are clear, the road at the bottom that's noted as Tullabudgera Creek Road, and then the Tullabudgera Connection intersection that looks like a four-way down the bottom, all of that is the state road network.
Correct.
And at the top, where it says Link Road, that doesn't currently exist, but is the southern side of the exit 87 interchange, which is that double diamond interchange.
Yes.
That is proposed to be a state road network connection. And
correct.
The section in between that, which is known as Old Coach Road, which is a council road network, is a council road. And then to the north of that is Hillcrest College and King's Christian College, and which is the largest, highest enrolments in Queensland, and Gold Coast Christian College. So that's the context here. So my actual question is, the project's costed at $207 million, which we've announced today in open session. The actual connection that looks like that blue, that hasn't yet been proposed, but looks like almost the northbound right-hand turn off that proposed four-way intersection, has just that section been costed? Because that would be a council road between Oyster Creek to Old Coach, which is all council network, nothing to do with state network.
So that's what we talked about before, where we're going to go away and do the planning and get much better idea of the scope and the cost.
Yeah. So the questions that have been asked so far is, how much of the project at $270 million is a state road network? And it occurs to me that at least half is state road network, because the project where Old Coach Road connects to Bermuda Street down to Tallabudra Creek Road has got how long is the connection between that southern intersection and how far along Tallabudra Creek Road have you proposed to have to go in order to make it work? Because that's not really part of the connection.
Couple of kilometres.
Couple of kilometres. So it's 2 kilometres into a separate part of the road.
Yep.
So I suppose what I'm just trying to get is that Old Coach Road has some safety issues which we need to upgrade, and it's actually entirely appropriate for us to do that. There's been fatalities on that road, and it is actually a bit of a difficult road. The proposal that we discussed in 2020 came accompanied by a video that had a 4-lane dual highway all the way, and I am assuming this $207 million is that 4-lane highway.
Correct.
Yeah, which is way over-engineered. It's not what we necessarily need at this time. Surely there's a scope for that blue line that you've got on that. Can you give me a cost per kilometre? Because that looks like about 1 kilometre.
Yes, so that's what we're proposing. We're proposing to investigate the blue line as part of our options assessment, as part of our new planning regime that we're doing this financial year, and then we will report back to council with the outcomes of that investigation.
Right. So there isn't a standard. We've got engineering standards across the city, but we don't have a cost per kilometre for a standard council road.
It's every road project has a unique aspect around it, geotechnical, the topography. So what we'll do is we'll come back with the Gate 2 options assessment, and we'll have a cost for 2A option 1, which is just the red dotted southern, and a cost for option 2, which will be the red and the blue. Okay. So we'll be able to dig into that in significant detail at that time, Councillor.
So good.
Councillor Hamill, and then we'll come back to Martin.
Chair, I had more of a high-level policy question around, I guess, and it ties into Mitch's presentation before with the 10-year plan. So this particular project has been in the CapEx book for 4 or 5 years now. And to my understanding, it's only ever gone through Gateway 1, or is it at Gateway 2 in the current process?
I've got to cast my mind back to the old Gateway process. So yes, it did receive Gateway 2 approval back in 2020.
Yeah.
And subsequently we went and did the start of the design process. We came to the prelim design with all the information we had. We've now put that process on hold, the Gate 3 process on hold, and come back to council with a...
I'm cool with that part. So under the P3M model, would this project have found its way to the CapEx book with future notional allocations showing when we were nowhere near that yet? Or under the P3M model, would it stay out until you actually had a level of confidence, level of surety to introduce it with some monetary requirements to it?
To the Chair, I think my understanding of P3M is once it gets through Gate 1, is allocated CapEx funding. Because if it didn't, years 2, 3, 4, all the way out, we'll just have a line item to it.
So I'm interested in a little bit more, because why couldn't that item just be showing money in 1 year for further design instead of starting to show money every year after for what we assume to be construction, which never ends up happening? We just keep rolling it forward into the future.
Through the Chair, certainly the level of accuracy to complete a stage, so of the funding required to complete the stage 2 retrospectively, but we always include a forecast, because in essence, when we're committing through a Gate 1, we're effectively saying a project is required. We're proceeding with the best information available at that time to take the project forward. At every gateway, we would update the total project cost and the cash phasing over the 4-year capital program. So that is not unusual, and the previous practice and the proposed new practice would be the same. Mm-hmm. But obviously, as we go through the conversation we had, I think, 3-4 months ago around the class 1, 2, 3, 4 estimates, and that improving level of accuracy through each gate. But certainly at a Gate 2, you would effectively have compared all the different options, completing do nothing, options such as this, potentially could have been presented at the gate 2, and then the preferred option is then taken to a market-ready design. So probably the big change has been the doubling of costs, which changes the benefit of the project. So we've re-prosecuted rather than blindly going on and presenting a gate 3.
Right.
And
So under both models at gate 1 or horizon 1, it'd end up in the book and it would have a forecast figure based on a very, very high level amount of concept design and knowledge. But the difference is with P3M, because we're going to get to the gate 2 and that looks a little bit deeper than what we currently did under the other program, the level of confidence that the future forecast would be more accurate.
That's correct, and you'd expect the similar improvement at gate 3, and obviously once you've got gate 4 tender result, the cost is the cost.
But the previous resolution did seek delivery partnership with TMR at that particular time as well. So as much as we were going through that process, I don't believe we've actually achieved that.
Correct.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I understand the red section option 1 is for safety, but option 2 being the sort of a new road, and so I'm just obviously concerned about the Old Burleigh Town, which leads into the petition in the next item, but that's a community in my division. Just really, and I've read the report, community consultation be part of it, but really just seeking to press how community consultation will occur before the final design in that community, because I get we're talking about costs and benefits, but community consultation in that the community is being affected, how will they be able to participate so that they can meaningfully make changes that will still retain amenity while getting that outcome? So, looking to confirm that that will meaningfully take place.
Through the Chair, I think that leads into the next agenda item. So I can talk about it now.
Happy to wait.
It would be premature for us to go out to the community now. We haven't actually got a defined scope. Once we have a defined scope, we'll take that back to council, seeking their endorsement of the defined scope, and that's when we will then start some more comprehensive community consultation on the defined scope. Then we'll be doing some further consultation before the detailed design is finalised, and that's the opportunity where the community will be able to provide input into things like the amenity, the landscaping side of things of the road project before the design is finalised, and then there will be consultation. As like any construction phase of a project, there is ongoing consultation. A lot of that consultation is one-on-one. Consultation about construction noise, that sort of thing.
Thank you, Chair. Just and my final question, I guess that it's that blue section that I'm most focused on. In that, the initial, gold standard design was the linking straight from Bermuda Street onto Old Coach Road. I guess I'm a little concerned by opening up a new road, and if we don't essentially do it properly, will that create additional traffic problems if it doesn't have the carrying capacity? But I understand we can't go it alone. The costs are enormous, but I'm just conscious that if we don't do it properly, will that create more of a traffic problem closer to those residents?
Through the Chair, look, that's all part of the work we now need to do, but as you can see with the prelim design, Oyster Creek Road was being realigned anyway. So there was that, we will see if we can actually get that, that blue line as close as possible to that. So there's, less redundant work. What you've also got to remember with the Old Burleigh Town community, at the moment, they can't go south and they can't go west. All right, so you live in that community, and you've got a child that goes to St Andrew's School, you've got a child to go to the schools, to go to the local Coles, you have to do a trip on the M1. So that blue link opens up that whole community. They can now drive down to Complex Park, they can now drive or walk and cycle to St Andrew's School. They can now do a local trip on a local road to their local Coles shopping centre. So there are positive benefits to the community with that blue line, with what we're proposing as well. It provides the connectivity for that, much improved connectivity for that community.
Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Chair. My query relates to a wider concern around the department's inability to engage TMR and the federal government on this project for some time now. I've got critical projects, road projects in my division that require urgent attention, and I've been informed that that does require state government involvement. So this change today does leave me concerned about whether or not the relationship between the council and the state government via TMR is functioning, and I'd like some comfort that there is an open channel outside of the Coomera connector, the M1 upgrades and the light rail projects.
Through
the Chair, I think the relationship, certainly at officer level with the department, is very positive. There have been conversations around how we can collaborate more effectively in early planning stages. The work that Nick's been presenting on our broader network strategies, I think we're 3 now of 5 presentations. They are conversations we have with the department. The department obviously shares their program drivers in Q-Trip, but in essence, there's obviously always a political element and priorities of state government. And I guess we've got a very strong council, I guess, in terms of state engagement. So as far as officer relationships across both those programs you mentioned, I think they're very positive and quite collaborative.
It's an open channel. There's positive discussions. This is an outlier more than a common occurrence, I suppose, is the comfort level I'm looking for.
And I think at the moment this is part of a change recommendation that we keep reinforcing these to state government and other levels. That, as you're saying, it's not just the one. There's 4 or 5 around the city that's causing severe congestion to our
Just a
roads.
couple of follow-up questions, please. So a letter, I think, since I've been in the council, we're sending a lot of letters. This question was more relating to the direct channel between TMR and council's traffic and transport, and making sure that this is not something that's going to be as a consistent problem, because, as I say, I've been told that I can't move on critical infrastructure projects in Robina without TMR, and I'm looking at a project here that's having to be downgraded significantly because of lack of TMR involvement. And so the next question that it leads to, because of the report and Mr. Prasser indicating that this project requires a project assurance framework, which Mr. Prasser just indicated could be a 5-year process. Is there any other projects on the Gold Coast where that's been, where we've been informed of that requirement from TMR that we haven't yet?
Through the Chair, Gold Coast Light Rail 4.
Okay. Any others? Any road networks?
So Gold Coast Light Rail 4 is currently going through the PAF process, which involves 3 stages: strategic merit test, preliminary evaluation, and detailed business case. So we are involved. We have a team embedded as part of that process. So that's anything that's over 50 million has to follow the project assurance framework. Anything less than 50 million has to follow what they call their on-queue process, which is a less rigorous process, but it's still a process you need to follow. So to get a funding partnership for this project at 200 million, it triggers that PAF process.
Was that a new change, the threshold level? Was that recently, so it's always been that threshold level?
It's been,
All right, thank you, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Because I think there might be a question. Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, that's what I just don't understand, Nick, that it's gone through quite a few years of talking to TMR, and I know there's been stuff on our website about this project. I think there's a lot of residents who, if you ask them right now, they think that project, that 4-way intersection was going to happen. And that we must have got some sort of assurance from TMR at some stage. I'm just a little bit concerned about that. So I just think we should add to the recommendation that we do write to the Transport Minister, suggesting that they re-look at this, at their proposal to just put signalisation from Old Coach Road onto Tallabudgera Creek Road, and that we seek funding from them to help us do what we need to do with Old Coach Road to make that happen.
And perhaps the Shadow Transport Minister.
And the opposition, the Shadow Transport Minister. I certainly have brought it up with my local member.
So if we can look at the recommendations at the moment, I don't know if there's any more questions, but we might get up. In the meantime, we can look at adding onto that. I'll go Councillor Tozer while we're getting it up, and we'll get some words. Yep, not a problem. With the changes, yep. So we'll put a 6. Got some wording. Yep.
You are.
Done that before. So what would you like to?
With the council right to the minister?
That the council right to the transport. The council right to the transport minister. Oh, that the mayor?
I think it needs to be the mayor.
Sorry. And the shadow transport minister.
Through the chair, it's the Minister for Transport and Main Roads is the official title.
Yep. Minister for Transport and Main Roads. Seeking reconsideration of their signalisation project of Old Coach Road and Tallebudgera Creek Road. To a four-way, to the original design of a four-way intersection. To the original design of a four-way intersection.
As opposed to offset.
Full stop. Consideration of funding. I don't know if we should include funding with this at this stage for Old Coach Road, because my idea was for us to seek funding from TMR for what we would need to do, the upgrade of Old Coach Road to make the four-way signalisation happen. Do you want to leave it at that for the moment?
Their road.
Yeah, it's their road. That's what I mean.
It's their project anyway, so
no,
it's their road. They'd have to fund it anyway.
It's writing a letter's fine, but it's their road and their intersection. It's nothing to do with us. Don't ask us for funding. We're not doing it.
Okay.
Happy to move that, Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you.
Councillor Tozer to second it. Do you want to talk to it?
Well, there's been. I would just like to add that because I do think that a lot of residents, especially in my division in Tallebudgera Valley, and a lot of people who actually use Old Coach Road to go to St Andrew's School and to Copley Sports Park. And also the Old Coach Road is actually used now as an alternative to the Gold Coast Highway and the M1. And we've been on this project for quite a while, and I'm keen to see it come to completion and certainly to make Old Coach Road much safer. But I really think that TMR's idea of just doing signalisation from Old Coach Road to Tallebudgera Creek Road and abandoning a four-way connection is just a band-aid. and it's going to create more problems than it'll solve. So I'm happy to move that and look forward to seeing some more planning coming forward for our state option 1 and 2. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if you're okay if I say a few words at this project, this is something I've been passionate about for some time, and I feel pretty frustrated by the whole process, Chair. I think, a $207 million project is not what I ever had in my head when we talked about this connection that was meant to be a release valve for what is significant congestion, particularly just north of here. We've heard today that the traffic modelling that was done at the southern end of Old Coach Road near the Tallebudgera Creek connection area, but the traffic that is currently traversing Stapley Drive and Gemvale Road north of those schools is also significant, and it frustrates me that we've ultimately scoped up a $207 million 4-lane highway project between 2 state road network pinch points, and it made sense. I get why the council officers ended up scoping the scale of the project to a 4-way highway between those 2 things, but it's actually not at that point right now. And frankly, for it to be delivered in that form, it really does need to be almost an entirely state-funded exercise. And I suppose I want to address some of Councillor Gates has made a few comments today, quite critical of that, because, frankly, if you do travel to the north, there is some roads up there that really have urban environment all around them, and they just haven't been adequately provided for. And it's become a contestable idea that this be delivered in the context of that congestion in the north. I don't want anyone who's watching today to think that I would want to argue against reducing congestion in the north. And frankly, this project in its current form, in the resolution we're looking at right now, just seeks to connect a council road network of Old Coach Road to the council road network of Oyster Creek, and then let the state do what they do as best they can when they're ready. And frankly, I think that's actually a good outcome. Today there has been a bit of, earlier in the debate, earlier in the questioning, I used the phrase "boo" to criticise Councillor Gates' commentary, and that wasn't meant. It was a bit of tongue-in-cheek, and I want to address it openly. It was a bit tongue-in-cheek, and I suppose I want to say that I actually share Councillor Gates' view that the scale and scope of this project is too big for what it is, but I understand why the council officers delivered it the way that it did because of the way the state road network intersects with this section. But what I do hope comes out of this, Chair, is that connection between Oyster Creek and Old Coach can be delivered, so the community who live in Old Burleytown can actually duck to the shops in Reedy Creek, which seems like a very simple thing, but that might be significantly less, maybe 10% of the total cost that's being proposed, maybe less than 10%. And frankly, that is actually a good outcome. If we can get that outcome, we'll end up having a very slight release valve to get people off the council road network and back onto the state road network to get to where they need to go, but also enable a bit of access into Reedy Creek and out of Reedy Creek in a way that's much more efficient and a better use of our road network. I hope our councillors support the motion today, despite them potentially being, a bit negative about the holistic project that we proposed today, because I think what this recommendation does actually say is let's scale this project back to the local road network and then deliver a good outcome for local residents.
And I'd like to thank the officers. I mean, the previous resolution was for TMR to be involved in the process, and obviously they haven't been involved, and the 4-year time delay has doubled a cost of a project like this. What we are addressing is the safety concerns along that stretch, but we're also looking at opportunities to have a connection road through Oyster Creek Drive, which will help local communities, and obviously we can continue to encourage state government to provide funding to this section, which is definitely growing and going to continue to bear a lot of traffic, particularly with a lot of the school networks along the road there. So before we go to the vote, happy for Councillor Gates to have a final say.
Thanks, Chairman. I just want to clarify that, I don't think there should be more emphasis placed on my problems than there should be in other parts of the city. Not at all. My questions today related to how projects are prioritised, and I also have this incredibly strong belief that the state government, which collects GST and mining taxes should be putting the appropriate funding into the roads that they have responsibility for. So I just can't support the poor old ratepayer, and Foxwell is part state as well, and I think some of my problems in Foxwell could possibly be because there's a view that ultimately the state will take the whole road over. And of course, we don't want to waste ratepayers' funds if that should be the case. But getting the outcomes for where the population is growing at the behest of the state government who sets our targets is something that's really important. So I don't buy any, I'll be supporting this committee recommendation today because we need to know what sort of funding we're looking at, and I hope that the report does focus on where funds are most necessary for the bucket of money that we have to put into capital works for road improvements in the city.
Thank you, Councillor Yates. We will take the vote now. All in favour? Carry.
Councillor Young heckling.
Yeah. This does lead now to the petition response. So the communication regarding the Old Coach Road Stage 2 upgrade project. So we've had a little discussion about what's happening in that area, but I'm not sure whether you want to just
through the chair
petition and
through the chair, we did touch on this item before. We've received a petition for residents of the Old Burleigh Town community seeking community consultation be undertaken on the Old Coach Road Stage 2 project. The response to the petition is that it's premature to undertake that consultation at this point in time. Once we have a defined scope, which has been approved, endorsed by council, we will then release that. There will also be community consultation undertaken before the detailed design is finalised. That's the opportunity where we get input from the community about amenity and landscaping and aesthetic issues. And then obviously, as with any other construction phase of a project, we have ongoing stakeholder engagement teams to undertake individual, address individual feedback.
Okay. Any questions? Councillor Tozer.
So I don't want to labour on this considering we've just gone through this process, but I think that the recommendation doesn't adequately capture what we have resolved in the previous item today. So if I might suggest that we leave one the same and 2 can become 3, and just number 2 is that council writes to the lead petitioner providing a copy of the report for item 6.3 and informing residents that the Old Coach Road to Stage 2 upgrade proposal has been significantly scaled back, or even something simple to the effect that the council officers draft a letter for the divisional councillor to review, to send to petitioners about the Old Coach Stage 2 project. So let me just word that. So we're noting the content of the report in replace to the petition, and we haven't actually addressed the petition itself, and so we need to do something about that because we've said we're going to advise the chief petitioner. I think it's called the lead petitioner, but anyway. Yeah. I just don't think I don't think one actually makes a decision. Noting the content of the report isn't relevant to the petition. The petition. Let me just think of the words. While I'm thinking of the words, maybe Councillor Martin could ask a question.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I note the response to this petition in that we are not looking at the fully fledged Old Coach Road. That was the result of the last item. But the original petition had some other elements. So yes, it was Old Coach Road Stage 2, but items, this is on page 41, items C and D were around the city producing a fact sheet on, the flora and fauna impacts, noise monitoring, but also holding a pop-up session around Oyster Creek Road and information sessions. So I suppose I don't want to see this closed off because those things are still live if we are going ahead with option 2B or 2A option 2, which was that blue dotted line, that those things still occur should the city have a suitable design. So just looking to make sure that we don't just close this off without addressing those.
Through the chair, if the foreshadowed resolution is around providing a copy of the report and the recommendation from the previous item, officers could provide context that should the options assessment for 2A be endorsed and approved, that then there would be a subsequent consultation process around a defined solution, which would involve some of those items that Nick talked about with public meetings, in terms of, how we engage with the community. So I don't think they're lost. Perhaps if we advise the petitioner, the lead petitioner, that of council's recommendation today, and then post us presenting back the 2A, option 1 and option 2, we can then re-engage with the petitioners, and they would be obviously part of any consultation process framed around that approved project. So I don't believe they'll be lost. They'll be deferred subject to the solution on 2A.
I'm comfortable for that as part of the report on the prior one. Thank you.
So, Councillor Tozer, are you happy with the current wording?
Yeah, that's pretty fine. And are you okay with that, Councillor Martin? They're your residents, so I'm saying I'm going to have some residents who are interested in, but you're going to have more.
Councillor Martin, do you want to?
So you just want me to send a copy of the report?
Copy of the report, but noting the director's comments around providing additional information around how city officers will engage. So all of the things that Michael spoke of, as long as they are included here. So
question through you to Councillor Martin. Do you want your residents to get do you want a letter that you can send to your residents about this project? Is that going to help you? Because council officers could draft a one-pager that says, here's a summary of the report, and if you want a copy of the report, contact your local councillor, and we can resolve that today.
Certainly, I think a summary would be great,
and the report,
rather than the fully detailed document that's available if they want to source that. But a summarised letter, I think, would be digestible for a lot of residents. Yes, thank you.
So maybe we say 3 that council officers prepare a draft letter to the divisional councillor for communication to petitioners. Does that sound okay? That's easy enough for you guys to do. Is that okay with you, Councillor Martin?
Yes.
To the divisional councillor, for the divisional councillor. So it's a draft letter for the divisional councillor. District councillor. Councillor. To provide to petitioners. And then you could say including the report, tailored at item 6.3, instead of to the report, including the report. Including reference to the report. Yeah. So I'm happy to move that. Councillor Martin, you are happy with that. So you're going to get a draft letter to send to petitioners so Old Burleytown knows what's happening in relation to this project.
Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
So you're happy to move it, Councillor Tozer? Happy to second it?
I'm an observer in this committee.
You're a observer, so you won't be able to... Can I have a seconder to the motion? I'm happy to second it. Okay, do you want to speak to it?
No, we just want to make sure that the community that are most affected by this project not proceeding gets it.
Okay. Does anyone want to talk against it?
Like that?
Anyone want to speak against?
I'm used to being mocked by Councillor Hamill, it's okay.
Young as well. Anyone want to speak against?
Invite Councillor Hamill to speak against it.
Put the motion to you all.
Motion is put.
All in favour? Carry. Okay, I'm just going to we'll take a 5-minute break if everyone needs a break. So if we come back in around 5 minutes' time.
The north-south contest. Look at it. Totally it is. It's ridiculous. Herman doesn't care. He was absolutely anti the project. He was with Donna on it. Yeah. 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 He was like, I wanted Robina delivered first. He didn't. I don't think he got that. This is Stapley Drive. That ultimately.
Streaming on. So we now move to item 6.5, presentation, Central North Gold Coast Transport Network Planning Overview. Nick, thank you very much. What we'll do is we'll listen to the whole presentation and we'll take the questions at the end. Questions at the end. Well, let's get started. Okay. You need to leave, Councillor Gates? No problem. I've got to be there too. Thank you, Nick. We'll get started. We'll get going.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. This is a presentation on a Central North Gold Coast Transport Network Planning Overview. This is number 3 of 5 presentations we're doing across the city. Previously done the northern part of the city, Central South at the last committee meeting, this one Central North. And at the next round of Transport Infrastructure Committee, we'll be doing 2 presentations, Southern and Western. So please note this is a summary only. It does include state initiatives. And we don't have the time to get into all the initiatives that we do across the area. I'll quickly run through this. I have briefed the relevant councillors last Wednesday on this, so none of this will be new to you. I'll try to get through this as quickly as possible. So it does align with our council plan, Connected Communities, but transport does have influence on all the other themes as well. We all know about our transport strategy and our modal plans and where a lot of our projects come from. So the context for Central North, it is the suburbs between the Coomera and Nerang Rivers, east of the Pacific Motorway. So it includes all those suburbs there. It has about 1/3 of the Gold Coast population, I think similar to the south at the last presentation, so about 1/3. Currently got about 215,000 people. By 2041, it's forecast to have 345, so significant growth. The largest suburb is Southport, 37,000 residents, and the highest, fastest growing suburbs over the last decade has been Hope Island, Biggerel Waters, Surfers Paradise, Southport. And if you have a look at our population model, it will continue to grow particularly in those suburbs. You can see there's the state networks, quite significant in terms of their road network. The Pacific Motorway obviously is the key north-south arterial, and then we have a suite of east-west roads. There is the passenger Brisbane and Gold Coast passenger rail line with a station at Helensvale. And you can see on the map this Gold Coast light rail system, which goes from Helensvale to Broadbeach South currently. And you can overlay our arterial network and distributor roads on top of that. It's quite well serviced by bus routes. It's got some the hubs are at Helensvale Station, obviously, and Nerang Station, but also Health and Knowledge Precinct, Harbour Town, Southport, Broadbeach South. And there are a number of high-frequency bus routes that service the area. So when I say high frequency, 15 minutes frequency, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We also have quite a few community transport initiatives that operate in the area. So I'll quickly go through this. A number of key initiatives that we are working on, which will help inform our transport planning moving forward. We're developing the next version of local government infrastructure plan. We have a new planning scheme that's being developed and a local growth management plan. So transport has a big input into those documents. Land use and transport are intrinsically linked. Land use drives transport. Transport can drive really good land use outcomes. We're also working on an asset excellence program. We're looking at refreshing our transport strategy as part of an overall integrated infrastructure planning approach. And we have quite a few TMR partnerships and extended delivery agreements occurring. Asset renewals, I'll quickly go through those, but you can see there we've got quite a few road reconstruction projects happening across the area. We've had a significant uplift in our road rehabilitation and reseal program. A few years ago it was 25 million, it's now up to 90 million. So we're aligning that with evidence base, with our condition assessment. So there's a significant amount of projects being delivered as part of that. Bridge and culvert renewals, so we have a lot there. And the reason why we have a lot there is because we have a lot of canal suburbs, and a lot of those bridges were put in back in the 1960s and 70s and 80s. They're reaching the end of their design life. They were put in by developers as well, so there's quite a few bridges that we need to rehabilitate, a few at Runaway Bay. But the most significant one there is the bottom one, which is the Salerno Street Bridge, which is at Surfers Paradise. That bridge will need to be replaced, not rehabilitated, but replaced. So that's a significant investment in our pipeline. We've got a whole heap of traffic signal renewal projects happening. Again, as part of our asset management maturity. We've got a lot of our traffic signals across the city were put in the 1980s, put in the 1990s. They no longer meet current standards. The electrical standards have changed. We've got asbestos pits, and so we've got a whole program moving forward where we will be refreshing all our traffic signal infrastructure. And while we're at those intersections, we also do capacity and safety improvements while we're there. Public transport. So there is a new train station being currently built at Hope Island Station, as you can see there. East-West mass transit corridors. So I touched on this in the last presentations. We're looking at east-west connectivity, in particular, with the city of 1 million people. What do we need to service them? We can't rely on a milk run bus service. We really need high quality, high frequency bus routes. So bus rapid transit is something we'll be advocating to the Department of Transport and Main Roads, and it's something as a policy initiatives start looking at also investing in mass transit ourselves to meet our population targets. So every year we have a whole program to upgrade our bus stops. That's the 24-25 program. So you can see that's the quantum. We do probably about 20 projects in this area every year. Active transport. So we all know about the Ocean Way. Our priorities for the Ocean Way are currently at the Spit and Main Beach, which we're currently doing planning on, as well as Lenfox Park, Labrador, which we're calling the Broadwater Way. So that forms part of our spine for our active transport network. The north-south spine, the Ocean Way, as part of the Coomera Connector, a Veloway is being constructed, and then as part of LGIP 3, we're looking at connecting and creating that ladder of east-west links for our cycle arterial ways, which is pretty important for us if we want to look at meaningful mode shift. So green bridges, we are currently looking at a suite of green bridge ideas. They are ideas. We have a council resolution to look at these and do the planning of them. So one we're currently looking at Surfers Paradise to Chevron Island, and it is basically linking up Cavill Avenue up through to Chevron Island, then linking over to our arts precinct. So that piece of work will have some integration with the Surfers Paradise revitalisation work that's being done as well. And the other one is the Broadbeach Waters to Isla Capri. So, as I said, they're ideas at this point in time. They may not necessarily be what you think is this one will be overly elaborate, but they're the type of options we look at as part of our planning for these green bridge ideas. And green bridges are part of an overall suite of us managing traffic congestion. They are not the solution for traffic congestion. So it needs to be important that we have lots of mechanisms that we look at to manage traffic congestion. And one of them is green bridges and active transport, but public transport is part of that as well as road network upgrades. We've recently completed the Southport Walking Network Plan, and that's the example of it there where we've got priority routes. This will help inform the Southport Master Plan that is currently has commenced, and we know that for Southport to act as our CBD, we need high quality active transport links throughout and to the CBD. And we're not just talking about paths, we're talking about really good user experience for pedestrians and cyclists. So we're talking about tree-lined and streets. We're talking about proper lighting and proper pedestrian crossing facilities. One initiative we've just commenced is the Southport Rail Trail. So a lot of you, I'm sure, have heard about the rail trails where disused railway lines are converted into trails for recreational and tourist cycling. There was an old rail line that went into Southport. I think that was discontinued in the 1950s. Most part of the corridor is still there. Some of it was sold off by the state. And now with the state constructing the Coomera Connector, we've gone in partnership with the state and looked at how we can connect it in. We've got a location now that we can aim for, and we're doing the planning for stage 1, as you can see there, which goes through Mollendina, and then stage 3, which will go through Southport. So this will be probably a little bit different to the traditional rail trails that we think of. It will be more of a concrete and landscaped treatment, because we also want commuters to use this facility as well. Shared paths, as you all know, we have quite a few shared paths. We invest $30 million a year in our active transport network. A lot of it involves upgrading and putting in new paths. We also now have a signalised pedestrian crossing program. So as traffic grows on our city, people are finding it more and more difficult to cross roads, particularly in our high activity centres. So we've now got a whole program. And our number one priority is Santa Barbara Road at Hope Island. So we're working with Councillor Fowler and the shopping centre there to get a really good outcome for the community. But we've got several more coming in the pipeline. And we've got 5 schools there who have signed up to our active school travel program, and to help facilitate that, we've got a whole suite of pedestrian cyclist improvements happening around those schools over the next few years. Disability access improvement program, so we are maturing this program as we move forward, and that's where we have an idea of and prioritise where best to invest in improving accessibility for those people who have a disability. Road network, we all know about the Coomera Connector Stage 1, so the state are investing $3 billion in the road network, so they are playing their part in addressing transport issues on the Gold Coast. And you can see the photo there on the left. That's a recent photo of the bridge that's being constructed just south of the Coomera River. So a significant project. The Coomera Connector will look like it will be fully opening in 2028. So as part of our work, our interface and our partnerships with the Department of Transport Main Roads, we have a very strong partnership with the Department of Transport Main Roads. We've managed to get a really good outcome here at the intersection of Helensvale Road, Monocrease Drive. As part of the Coomera Connector project, we had capacity enhancements in our pipeline. It probably would have cost us now, based on current rates, $7 or $8 million to upgrade that intersection. We've said to the Department of Transport Main Roads, while your contractors are out on site, are you able to do this work? It's right next to your construction site. They said yes, and they've come back with a cost estimate of $2.7 million. So that work will be happening very shortly. So we have a whole suite of road upgrades. These are all from our local government infrastructure program. You can see a photo there of Ola Capri Bridge, which was a $75, $80 million investment in Service Paradise. We've recently upgraded Sundale Bridge and Waterways Drive, but we've currently upgrading Wardoo Street, Cotloo Street, and then we have a whole suite of other projects we're doing across the city. So I've talked about Helensvale Road, Monocrease Drive, Helensvale Road, Signato, where we're doing some traffic signal refurbishment, some capacity enhancements. Again, Discovery Drive, Linfield Drive, we know that we need to signalise. That's one of those T intersections I've talked about before, where people are finding it difficult to turn right out of side streets. So that will be signalised. And Helensvale Road, so we have a council resolution to come back with a more detailed report on what our proposed actions are for Helensvale Road, but we do know that there will be some increases in traffic use in Helensvale Road in the future. Paradise Point, so Lay Drive, Marla Drive, you've got an example of there converting a roundabout into traffic signals. It's very difficult for people to cross that roundabout at the moment, and obviously with traffic signals, it's easier to control through our traffic management centre when there are certain legs that need more green time. So you can see we're now in Arundel Parkwood, so Napa Road, Greenacre Road. We've got that programmed. We're currently negotiating with the Department of Transport Main Roads to signalise that intersection as part of the Cooma Connector. So we'll see how we go with that. And then obviously Napa Road, we have eligible for 4-laning in the future. Southport, Labrador, currently we've got Garden Street, White Street and Queen and Garden. One's just about to start construction, the other one next year. And we've got Musgrave Avenue, Turpin Road, which is a traffic signal refurbishment project, but we'll also be doing pedestrian safety enhancements and capacity enhancements through that intersection. I'm not going to go through these individually. Ashmore, Benowa, significant amount of projects through there. As I mentioned before, Kotlu Wardu. We've got Benowa, Kotlu. Benowa Road is a significant road. We've got heaps of projects, Ashmore Road as well. And then something that we've got longer term in our LGIP is the Ashmore Road extension. So we've done some preliminary planning for that, and we'll firm that up as to through a business case in the future to see what the merits are of investing in that project. And just to quickly finish up, we have our traffic areas in Central North. So we've got a central traffic area. We've got a traffic area around the Health and Knowledge Precinct, around Southport and Bundle, Chevron Island. So that forms part of our transport system as well. So very quick.
Thank you, Nick. Any questions? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you very much. Through you, Chair, huge amount of stuff going on. Committee will be very grateful for the vast majority of it. May I ask, and I asked this question before in the last committee, there's been a new process this year of information coming in the style of presentations without report. Reports are really useful to us. We can refer back to resolutions before. If we want to refer back to this data at some point, you can go back to it. So I'm just requesting that everything that gets presented to us in committee get presented in a report, and that if there's a presentation attached, that would be great. And if you could send me the slides on this one, that would be great. I do have a question, 2 questions. Yeah. Pardon? So the Southport Rail Trail, I'm not sure what the last resolution was on that, but the last time I was updated on that was that was going to be a 100% state-funded event, and I was told that it wouldn't be concreted through Butterfly Gardens, and I'm now hearing it's a partnership and it is a full concrete thing. So perhaps maybe not in this setting, but if I can just find out about that, find out what's changed since the last resolution to now. And then the road upgrades, with the costings on the road upgrades, I've lost my confidence in our budgets. If we look at Kotlu Street, Wardu, which I'm dealing with at the moment, the most recent advice is we're on budget. Well, we're on budget to our latest amendment of that budget. It's been quite extreme if we look at what the original budget was and what the budget is now for it. So when I see all those forecasts, I go, is that a Kotlu Street Wardu budget, or is that really something that I can depend on, that really suggests what it's actually going to end up costing? So that's my question.
I'll try to remember the 4 questions. The first one with regards to the presentations in the report, associated report. So these presentations are on public record, so they do form part of the minutes of the meetings. We thought that doing a presentation first would be the best way going forward. Then at the end of the 5 presentations, we actually will be bringing a report to the November Transport Infrastructure Committee, which will be a summary of all the presentations and also provide some information about a little bit about way forward with some of the initiatives. So we'll be wrapping them up into one overall report. So all the details from the presentations will be in that report as an attachment with a high level summary and a way forward moving from that. So that's the first question. Southport Rail Trail. I can't recall us ever having a council resolution. It's still in the planning phase. I know that some of it will need to be careful about what treatment we use. A traditional rail trail is a gravel, but if we want these to be used by commuters, we want people to ride to schools and universities and to work, some of them will have to be a hard surface treatment. But we will making sure that those treatments are aesthetically pleasing, because this will be part of our cycling arterial network.
And with that, the question about the partnership. So when I hear partnership, I hear us funding as well as state. I'm not sure if that's what you meant when you said that, because that's news to me if that's the case.
Yep. So the rail trails are always 50-50 funded. I don't know what information you were provided about 100% by the state, but they do now have a grants program for rail trails, so we'll be tapping into that and hopefully getting 50-50 funding for that initiative.
And can we get a copy of the slides tomorrow? Thanks.
I suppose through the chair, the last question you asked was around budget accuracy. One of the things we have going since Michael's joined us is we've got an asset excellence program where we are trying to, one of the items there we're trying to set up is a infrastructure PMO, project program management office. Look, that program management office will have a number of functions. One of it will be cost control and the other will be schedule control and things like that. We are trying to improve our capability of budget accuracy, schedule accuracy, all of those things as part of our growth in what Mitch presented earlier about. We've got some really challenging objectives to hit our capital program going forward, and all of that requires us to be best in class in trying to actually manage our cost and timing. So it is something we are actively working on, Councillor.
Councillor Gates.
Thank you, Chairman. Through you. The report mentioned the Ocean Way at the Spit and Main Beach. Where are we with hedges? Because there's been a lot in the media in the last couple of weeks about the on-road situation for pedestrians and cyclists. So have we progressed in any way with regard to the Ocean Way on hedges?
Yep, through the chair. I suppose the answer to that one is we're still working with TMR on that project. Like, we're trying to deliver that project as part of Light Rail 3. We've still got a significant amount of design work to get going through that area. There are issues we need to resolve with the seawall and things like that. So there is still a lot of work to go on that project, Councillor.
Okay. Thank you.
Well and truly in the design phase.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Mr. Price, I just wanted some confirmation on the active transport networks next to state roads. So I know when we caught up and we went through this presentation, we discussed that it's our responsibility as local council. And then I've had some conflicting advice saying that it's state responsibility. So I just wanted to get that cleared up again, if that's okay.
This is for footpaths.
Yeah.
Through the chair. So yes. So under the current arrangement, the verge areas and the paths are the city has been investing in, but the projects that we are doing on state roads are 50% funded. So we're doing a project at the moment on Nerang Broadbeach Road. We're looking at doing one on Springbrook Parkway, which will be seeking a 50% contribution from the state. Bollingbook Falls.
Springbrook Road.
Springbrook Road, sorry.
Yep.
Springbrook Road.
Just like the Parkway, but just a bit smaller.
So It is. We have a lot of other priorities, as you know, Hope Island Road, Tambourine Oxford Road, are state roads, and there are some missing links on those roads which are really form part of our active transport network, and we'll be investing in, and we'll be seeking a 50% contribution from the state for those.
Mr. Chair, may I answer that?
Councillor Tozer.
Sorry,
Councillor Fowler.
Sorry, have you finished?
Sorry.
Councillor Fowler?
Sorry, Nick. It's more the clarification that I'm after. So I've been told numerous times that footpaths along state roads are state responsibility. I don't mean that then it's wholly funded by state, but then I'm now hearing that it's a local responsibility. So in our active transport planning, all the footpaths that are required down state roads sits as a responsibility of who? Is it state or is it the city? I understand that funding's usually combined in different models.
So it's the city.
Mr. Chair.
City.
Again, a question I noticed
Just a second.
last
Can we
week. There's actually a report
just
about
one
this.
second. We'll just,
of course,
they're jumping in. You finished?
Yeah, thank you. I think there's some other councillors who probably think it's state, and there's other, even when I talk to state, they're saying state. So I'm just confused. But if it's the city, it's the city. Okay.
Again, to clarify, the report
Councillor Tozer,
Council has received a report on this matter.
Can you just wait until I acknowledge it?
Sorry, I thought that was
Councillor
ended.
Tozer.
Yeah. So Council's received a report relating to this exact matter. It was tabled as part of a question notice, I think, in November last year, and it referred. It was a report prepared by officers, and it referred to a document colloquially known as the Blue Book, which is a negotiated agreement between the Local Government Association of Queensland and TMR, Transport and Main Roads, and it talks about assets on state road verges like pathways, and it has a set of criteria that outline, whose responsibility is different areas of the state road reserve. The report, and I'm summarising, you'll have to read it. You can just ask for it, and we can maybe provide a copy of that report to all councillors who might be interested in it. Effectively says that the LGAQ negotiated agreement was not, the City of Gold Coast was not one of the local governments that was consulted as part of that negotiated agreement. And each state road reserve pathway project is negotiated by council and TMR on a case-by-case basis. There have been examples where, and it gave some examples in the report, where the council made a submission to a grant program that was either federal or state funded for a pathway on a state road, and sometimes the federal government chipped in money, sometimes the state government chipped in money, and sometimes there was a multiple level of government. But I can't recall a situation or an example where the whole of city has funded the pathway entirely, although that wasn't captured in the report. Normally, there's a partnership agreement struck.
Okay. So there's a report. So there's a report there that we can refer to.
That report can be provided by officers to any councillor.
That we can do it. Thank you. Is there any other questions?
Can I follow on from that? Transport and Main Roads, if you write to them, they will tell you that council funds it.
Councillor Tozer, they said they'll provide the report. Thank you. Is there any more questions? Any more questions? Okay. I'm happy to remove the report. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Councillor Young. Yeah. Thank you. And as mentioned earlier, this is part of the bigger report that we're going to get at the end of the year. It gives all councillors the opportunity to understand the journey to get to the final report and have a say. So thank you to the team for the presentations. So we'll put it to the floor. All in favour? Carried. 6.6 open space, public amenities, design and maintenance. Ross, welcome.
Councillors, obviously everyone I think knows Ross, also welcome Nathan. Obviously a lot of work has been done to look at our current asset base around public amenities. The team have obviously looked at condition assessment, alignment, and we're also presenting, I guess, a multi-criteria assessment which will guide council in a consistent investment in terms of upgrades and new facilities going into the future. So from an asset management perspective and getting a consistent service standard across the city, I think this is a very important conversation, and I'll pass over to Nathan to give a quick presentation.
Thank you. Councillors, and through the chair, the public amenities in the parks open spaces are some of our most important facilities that we have, highly utilised by the public, but also highly vandalised and at risk of damage. And it's important we ensure that these public amenities are located in locations where they are going to be used, best serving the community need, but also robust, so they stand the test of time. So we have met with all councillors in the city to basically provide a report with a summary of from the resolution that was carried from last year. And I know the report details a lot of different aspects on how we manage and maintain facilities, with recommendations tabled at the base of the report. If there are any questions you'd like to throw straight from the floor, I'm happy to take those on board. Otherwise, the recommendations are as provided.
Any questions? Councillor Young.
Chairman, hi Nathan, thanks for the meeting the other day. Just asking firstly about the changing places facilities. We've got 9 of them, soon to be 10. And I quickly scanned through that list, and there's none within cooey of any of my parks and the people that use them. And I wondered how we define that list, or just determine that list, and how we might add to that list, if there's a procedure for that evaluation, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the chair, we do work closely with inclusion teams in the city who are experts in the space of where we need to provide them, as well as other officers in the design space. In the city, whilst there's 12, if you look across the border into Tweed and Byron Bay, there's actually 0. So we are ahead of the game there, I think, with the provision of 10 in the city already, and the majority of which are in city control and maintained by the city. But that is the process. We work closely with the experts within the city who can basically provide us the information of where they're needed based on the site dynamics, the open space, the personnel and the people who are going to be using those facilities.
Not really answering the question. Is there a process of evaluation? Let's say I suggested that we might put one at the Rank Bicentennial Centre in the publicly accessible facilities there. How would you go about it, assessing that?
So that process would do in conjunction with the inclusive teams, city inclusion teams, to make sure that we are putting the city funds in the right locations and prioritising those.
Thank you.
So from this report, we've obviously got the evaluation and when they're due to be renewed. At the point of renewal, there'll be a time where a conversation will be had whether that's the appropriate location. I suppose the question is, how do we as local councillors be involved in that to give our feedback in relation to locations that may or may not be appropriate for either the current facilities or new facilities?
That is the case. So there are, 262 public amenity facilities in the city that the city maintains, and many of those are sort of legacy in their design, and as much as they do meet the standards of the day, many of them don't really meet compliance today. So that process there needs to be considered where we need to be putting these changing places facilities. So there is a process around that when we do that renewal process and the investigations, making sure we include those where needed.
And the councillor will be part of that consideration at that time. I think that was the question.
That's correct. Yep.
Councillor Gates.
Thanks very much, Chairman. Through you, I don't recall having a briefing on this. Can you please tell me I didn't have one, or else I think I'm going crazy? I don't believe I've met you previously about this?
No, I did meet with, I think, probably 95% of officers personally myself, but it might have been another officer in our team.
I haven't been briefed on this at all, and I note that it suggests that all councillors have been briefed. I would like to have a meeting if I could, because I note that the recommendation suggests that Council endorses the removal of public amenities facilities that are assessed as being in poor condition or in a location that provides low community benefit. So we're actually endorsing that going forward. And I'm not exactly sure where all the amenities are. I couldn't get to the 12 or so that are in Division 3 in my mind. So I would like to have the opportunity of a meeting to see where all of the public amenities are and just be certain. I mean, I would be a little uncomfortable about just endorsing removal without it being specific. I would hope that there would be an opportunity, if there is a recommendation for removal, for it to be put to the council so that the representative had some input into that before just through this saying, yeah, take them if they're considered surplus to requirement.
Through the chair, Councillor Gates, actually recommendation number 3 actually talks about that when we recommend that a facility is identified for removal, an assessment will be made of the local community need in consultation with the local councillor. So
I would remove 2. Why do you need 2? Because maybe, I mean, 2 comes before 3.
Through the chair, I think the intent for the second resolution is that we want council to endorse the rationale about looking at the service provision across our city and utilising the scoring and multi-criteria analysis that we do on our toilets, in recognition that there is a lot of toilets out there that probably aren't performing a service that we need, and that funding is better off redirected into locations where there is a gap in service. So the overall intent of this particular sort of move here is to sort of say, look, we've got a lot of public toilets and they cost a lot of money to maintain and look after. We have a growing city. We want to continue that level of service across the city. But there's a recognition that there's a number of toilets out there that are in locations that shouldn't be there. And so what we want to do is make sure that when we assess the sites, we actually are taking into account all of the things that we would assess a site to be suitable for a toilet. And if it doesn't meet that criteria, then we'll come and work with the council to say, look, this site, we don't believe this site warrants a toilet, but we've got another site in your division or area that has a gap, and we think the non-renewal of that asset should be redirected into this, so that the net result is we don't get a proliferation of toilets, but we're responding to the community need where they're required.
And I don't disagree with that, but my preference would be, and I don't know how other councillors feel, but my preference would be for you to highlight those amenities that are considered either surplus or not appropriate for use, and bring it to council and let councillors have input into whether they're removed or not, and whether a suitable replacement might be appropriate. I feel a discomfort with the way this is worded, because I just feel that something will be removed that someone didn't want removed, and then you'll be able to say, well, you authorised it by allowing that to happen. It wouldn't be my preference. I would remove 2.
Question?
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I had a specific question about Oxenford Sports Park. I know that the 2 toilets in that precinct are my number 4s, I think, by memory. And I just wanted to ask a question, perhaps while Mr. Macaulay's in the room, but at the Oxenford Sports Park, we're embarking on developing a new men's shed and also an enhancement of that cricket facility where that public toilet is located. So while it's underutilised now, I did the scoring of its future and it sits at about 26. I was just wondering whether there was thought or consideration into us looking at maybe perhaps more affordable replacement of that being public toilets in alongside the men's shed, being that we'll have 30 car parks, we'll have an enhanced cricket precinct, and perhaps that could bring the costs down so that we could do it as part of that project if the renewal is coming in a couple of years anyway.
Through the chair, we do consider that with the investigations analysis of when we're doing a toilet construction or the design phase of where it's going to go, and the different design elements you have for a toilet is considered in that. So it is the case that sometimes we do install public amenity facilities adjacent to or alongside other developments and buildings just to take advantage of the economy of scale of build.
Sorry, Chair, just one follow-on. So how do we go about having that conversation? Do we just contact, would it be yourself, Ross, that we have that conversation with? Okay, thank you.
Councillor Young.
Thanks, Chairman. And again, I appreciate this multi-criteria analysis. It's a good approach. A couple of questions. One is about car parking. It talks about the ability to travel and park at this location. So some parks, obviously, there's a car park within the park. Some parks, the parking is outside of the park and the street, but still in close proximity. Would you count both of those as the same?
Through the chair again, car parking is essential for a park and open space location where we are trying to attract people to stay as a long-term destination, and that's where we want the amenity facilities. Whether the parking is available adjacent to or inside the parkland, it'll be the same scoring.
Thanks, Nathan. And in regard to the distance to existing public amenities, like in the nearby proximity, I've relied upon the fact that at Vinsine Park on Meringbone Desert Road, the nearest park with toilets is only a few hundred metres away, but it's been put to me, well, you've got to cross a pretty busy road. It's really not that achievable if you've got a kid or you're an aged person. I mean, that's been improved now by new traffic signals, but do you take that into account, or are you just looking purely at the distance?
Through the chair again, the guide is just that. It's a guide and a point scoring system to help us make informed decisions. It is the case in those situations that we do look to use the point scoring system as a guide, and sometimes the dynamics of the site need to be taken into account as well, where the accessibility of roads and distances to other toilets may not be the primary factor of saying yes or no to whether a toilet is required. So we have many facilities in that case where they are within a certain distance. Yes, that might score slightly lower than another facility nearby, but it may not be the case that it's not needed.
Thanks, Nathan. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Chair. Just getting back to the changing places, Nathan, I notice there's none in Division 14, but I do have an amenity block in Crop Park that was added on to the original block that actually does cater for disabled people. Maybe, I don't know what the difference is. I don't think there is a hoist in that one. So are there other amenity blocks that just maybe have changing facilities that are cut lower for wheelchair access? Because I know my Disabled Surfers Association use that amenity block for changing when they have their events there. Are there any others around the area that could be considered as changing places?
Through the chair, the case with the changing places facilities is it's an accreditation process that must meet a very stringent standard of fittings and fixtures and size. So in that case, it wouldn't sort of tick that box on the national program of changing places facilities, but is quite a useful provision for that area.
Well, that was just thinking about Councillor Young's, option that maybe it may not get the full-blown accreditation one, but I know it's very, very well used. Thanks.
Councillor Hamill.
Mr. Chair, there was a former councillor who used to like to make the comment that you could build a small house for cheaper than you could build a new toilet block. Good old Councillor Worcester. And it was a fairly fair point. And my understanding of one of the reasons why they were so expensive was because we were very ad hoc with this, and that we were installing toilets where the program didn't really call for it, and renewals and timings and whatnot really been taken into account properly. So can I understand that the outcome of this would be that we would better lock in a much more holistic kind of 10-year program where we can get consistent with the model of amenity we're putting out, and possibly kind of go out to tender for one contract to deliver the next 10 years worth of work kind of example, so that we can reduce those costs down?
Through the chair, we do have a panel of providers that sort of does provide benefits in reduced costs overall because of the compared to a tender approach, the timeframes around that. So there is a competitive panel that we go to where that is competitive, so that provides cost benefit with that. And we do have a renewal prioritisation program as well, where we identify as far out as we can using the condition scoring system to know when a toilet does need to be replaced. So that we're trying to our utmost to really have that planning as far out and advanced as possible.
So, Chair, just to check it, so we will end up getting toilets in the right location at a cheaper cost, is the takeaway for me?
That's right. That's with the varying designs we utilise as well. We have a public design guideline which we use and developers use to ensure we get the best facilities for the city. That has a bit of wiggle room for us to develop public amenities in to suit the dynamics at the best cost.
And Mr. Chair, the second question, Councillor Gates kind of pointed about a list being brought forward. My understanding from my briefing on this is that we don't have a 50-year program on this kind of lined out. It'll be difficult to bring forward a list that's much more than just the next couple of years, because you're still collecting a lot of data and doing that work. But sometime in the future, you would be able to bring forward a list that might look at the next 4 to 5 years ahead. Am I accurate in that?
Would you be talking about renewal or new and upgrade? Is it just the replacement?
Both, but it's specifically the cancel. The removal of assets.
Yeah.
So you are collecting data and doing work at the moment that would allow a list to be available in the future.
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct. The analysis we do about renewal and how a facility is used, and then working in conjunction with councillors on determining its need and alternatives in the area. That's something we're doing now, not only with public amenities, but other assets in open space. So that would continue to be that approach.
Through the chair, can I just make a comment on producing a list of all the proposed, say, non-renewal assets? There's a lot of assets out there that are perfectly serviceable toilets that will last another 20 years, but they may have just been put in the wrong location. I would be remiss to sort of identify today that in 20 years' time that toilet may be a non-renewal, because we don't know whether the parks around it get developed. We don't know whether more people are moving into that area. We'll have an idea, but it may be that sort of in 20 years' time, it actually might tick the box for, today we don't think it's one worth renewing, but in 20 years' time, it might be. So we sort of really need to sweat the assets as good as we can. This report is not intending to, proactively remove anything. What we want to do is ensure that we keep these assets going until they're no longer serviceable, and at that point in time, when they're, getting quite old and tired, to make a determination at that point in time to say, okay, look, what's the future growth here? Is there any need for this particular facility here? And that's the time in which we would make the decision to actually remove, and that's the time in which we would make the decision to actually go, okay, where else could it go? Okay.
Through the chair, if I could, can I just respond to one of the other points Councillor Hamill made? You asked a question about programs of work. The intent here is to actually, to deliver public amenities as a program of work, but that is the intent for all of infrastructure, where we can actually run programs rather than small projects. We are looking to run programs as much as we can. So, yes, the answer is yes for public amenities, but it's yes for road renewals, it's yes for water work, it's yes for all the things we're trying to do through infrastructure to have as much run as programs as we can.
Councillor Tozer.
On page 52 of the report, Chair, it talks about the asset condition of the assets. It looks like some of the body of work in relation to condition reports has already been done. There's one rated 5 and one rated 4. Is it possible for us to have a list of the 18 rated 4 and the 1 rated 5 before the council meeting? Can you distribute that to all councillors? Is that allowed?
Through the chair, sorry, councillor, did you request that before the end of this meeting, a list before the
No, just before council meeting. So, I mean, the last couple of questions have been about condition reports and the potential removal of facilities, and it occurs to me the information on page 52 kind of possibly might lead us down a path that helps us identify where the greatest risk might be, given that you have already done the body of work to assess those assets. And I'm probably making an assumption that the 139 that are rated 3, which is fair, are not at risk of removal. They've got a 5 to 10 year life, but the ones rated 4 and 5, which total 19, they might be. And so if you could get us that list of 19, then we can have a look at it, and then Councillor Gates or other councillors might have a view about what another step might be like that at the full council meeting.
Through the chair, we can provide that list, and we can provide our current thinking in terms of whether we're going to renew it or whether it's a non-renewal.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Gates, did you have another question?
Thank you. Yeah, well, on that note, if I can have my briefing before full council and have a better understanding, that would be helpful, because I still feel that, I'll support the recommendation today, but I feel that when the removal of public assets is considered, it should be the subject of a report to council. So I don't ever like to give carte blanche for the removal of community facilities in the area that I represent. I would like just to have input into that, because there might be something you know that I don't, or there might be something I know that you don't. So I just would like the protection of being aware if something was going to be demolished. And the way that this recommendation reads today, there's no requirement for that to be the case. I appreciate that as a courtesy you might advise councillors, but from the wording of the recommendation, there's no certainty for me that that would be the case. Sorry? Well, I was going to suggest a change to it, that the proposed removal of public amenities facilities that are assessed as being in poor condition and in a location that provides low community benefit be the subject of a further report to council. Just a slight change so that we were sure that we would see it. But I don't know how everyone else feels, and I'm quite happy.
Okay. I'll come to Councillor Doran first, and then we'll...
I did have one more question, unless it related to that. My only other question was whether the Upper Coomera Centre or the Coomera Indoor Sports Centre were either looked at or considered for changing spaces.
Through the chair, in the list of 262 public amenity facilities that we count in that figure, they are the ones that are externally accessible. They might be attached to a rugby league clubhouse, for example, or standalone in a park. If it's within a community centre or other sports centre, it's not in that figure. But
so the Gold Coast Sports and Leisure Centre it's an external facility there, is it?
It'll be one that's not in our sort of remit of open space assets total, but for the same fact that it is a public amenity facility, when that does come up for renewal, assessment on need for changing places facility would be carried out as well.
Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Chair. Noting a lot of the conversation today is about obviously removing and upgrading, Given Division 11 has only 5, I'd like to also acknowledge that we probably need to also consider, as you have outlined on page 56, the needs assessment of certain areas that might actually need more public amenities, and I'd encourage and ask you to also consider that in the future work, which I think, Nathan, we talked about, that is part of the review. And to note that, Chair, some of these facilities are also contained within sport clubs. One particular in my area at Robina Common is quite run down. The sports facility in itself needs an upgrade, and this would be captured as part of any upgrade there. But it's tricky to upgrade them when they're part of a community facility, and I'd ask that we also consider how we go about maintaining those facilities, especially when in an area like Division 11 there is only 5 within the whole area. Thanks.
Could I just ask a question on that? Any public toilets that are part of a community lease, how do we consider those? Does that fall under the lease of maintenance of the leaseor, or does it get maintained by ourselves? And would that be included in these assessments?
Through the chair, thanks, Councillor. Those facilities that are within leased areas, they're under the control of the lessee, so can be exclusively used and locked up to suit the needs of that lessee. For example, a tennis club will have public amenity facilities within their leased area, and they're under the control, maintenance, renewal responsibility of that organisation. Comparison to, say, a rugby league club may not have the same, daytime use as the sport of tennis does. So, thus, those toilets are open and accessible for the community.
So, are all leases the same? Are we saying they're all going to be exactly the same, or could we have some leases that organisations have that do need to be open 24 hours a day, which I have seen previously? So I suppose my question is, this report and consideration of public toilets, do we consider the different leases out there that may or may not provide a public toilet facility for the community?
Thank you, Chair. Where public toilets are included within a lease facility and they're treated as public toilets, that is the case where the city maintains those public facilities, and we plan their renewal and plan their upgrade. And where possible, best practice is actually to separate them and have a disconnected public toilet. So you'll see a lot of our new developments do that. Or if that's not possible, and where we contribute to a club being renewed, we contribute at the same time to deliver a renewed toilet or public amenity, and that helps with the business case and facilitation of the upgrade of the broader lease site. And in those cases, the toilet may, or the facilities may be part of the building, but we take on the maintenance burden and the like for those facilities.
Any more questions? If not, do we want to make a change of recommendation? Councillor Gates?
What I'll do, I don't know how anyone else feels, so I'll just foreshadow what's on the screen if someone else wants to move the committee. Because I haven't had the briefing, I don't want to overstep, but I'll foreshadow what's on the screen if someone else wants to move the committee recommendation.
So, Councillor Tozer, are we talking about the original motion, which that's the original motion at the moment, so we haven't got a mover at this stage.
I'm not uncomfortable with the two that Councillor Gates proposed.
Okay. So
you're comfortable for me?
I'm comfortable with you.
Okay, well then I'm happy to move that as a change recommendation.
Councillor Young, would you like to talk to it?
And if I can just speak to it with my limited capacity, but I do appreciate what the officers are attempting to do here, and it's another improvement in the way that we work. But I do also want to be sure that each individual councillor's community assets are protected until the councillor has an awareness of what the intention for that facility might be. So I think this just adds an extra level of comfort for the council, and I'm happy to move it.
Okay. Question?
Can I check with Councillor Gates? Is the intent of this that no matter what a report has to come to council, or if the divisional councillor is happy for the removal of the asset, can officers bypass the report to council?
Look, I'd be happy for that, but we would need to actually stipulate that.
Yeah, because I just don't see the point of officers writing a report if the divisional councillor is supportive. So maybe a process where, you know, the divisional councillor is consulted, and if they agree to the removal of the asset, no reports required at council. But if they disagree, then it comes
you
to
can,
committee.
Perhaps if you add another
Delegated.
3,
Yep.
and then, or you know, and add another point as 3 that says, or another one as 2 that says, subject to, should the approval of the divisional councillor be provided,
Could
no
2 read
report would be necessary.
subject to the approval of the divisional councillor, that any proposed removal of public amending facilities. Yeah. Yep. I'm sure the EGM and Mark and Ross get the intent. So as long as everyone's comfortable with that, I don't see the point of reports for the sake of reports if the divisional councillor and officers are in agreement.
That's not actually correct, though. I get what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I know you do. Would you mind helping
that
me?
any proposed removal of public amenities facilities be brought to the attention of the divisional councillor? Yeah. Oh, sorry. We need. Sorry, I've put that in the wrong place. It should be after that community benefit. It should be. Sorry. Be brought to the attention of the divisional councillor prior to removal. Should it be necessary, a further report be presented to council. That really covers it, doesn't it? So if the divisional councillor says, okay, go, nothing further is necessary, and if the divisional councillor has a concern, a report can be presented to council. And it might sound a little picky. I'm sorry if you feel that it is, but I guess when you've been here as long as me, you've seen these things trip you up. and it can just be a simple oversight without any intention. So
through the Chair, Councillor, we're happy with that recommendation.
Thank you very much. So moved.
Councillor, comfortable with that, Councillor Young? Seconder?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Comfortable with that? Move Councillor Gates, seconded Councillor Young. Councillor Gates, do you want to talk again? No? Anyone want to speak against? Okay, all in favour? Carry. So 6.7. 6.7's already been through. So we're going to 7.1, which we will need to move into close. So can I have a mover that the report be considered closed session pursuant to section 254J3 of the Local Government Regulation 2012 for the reasons that matters involves the local government budget, negotiations in relation to the commercial matter involving the local government for which public discussion would likely be prejudiced to the interests of the local government and negotiation relation to taking of land by the local government under the Acquisition of Land Act 1967. Councillor
Just prior to taking the vote on going into closed session, I wanted to put to the council whether I need to make a declaration or not. And I'll just briefly advise that on the 4th of September 2015, I accepted a donation of $390 from one of the owners of some land mentioned within the report. And again, on the 5th of the 10th, 16, I accepted $2,500, but I gave it all back. And we had that subsequent legal opinion to council that if the money had been returned in full, then it was irrelevant. It didn't form part of my electoral return for that particular year. So given the $390 was in 2015, I wanted to seek the council's advice as to whether they believe I should make a formal declaration today.
Councillor Hamel.
Mr. Chair, I think we've taken a fairly strong stance on this in this term now for Councillor Gates that when we're outside the relevant term and it is so minor and remote in nature that I definitely don't feel the need for a conflict of interest to be raised on this matter and put that on the public record.
Councillor Young.
Thanks, through you, Chair. I'd just like to pose a question to Councillor Gates, just in the public interest. Have you had a discussion with either of those owners about this item?
No, not at all.
Right, I don't have any problem.
So any other questions? So I'm happy to leave it unless you
So you're happy
feel...
to leave it? Okay, thank you.
Unless you've...
Thank you.
So it's on the screen. It's on the screen. I'm not going to read it again. Do I have a mover to go into close? Councillor Marshall, seconder.
Are you sure you don't read it again?
No, once enough. Councillor Hammer, all in favour? Carried. Streaming on. Welcome back. Streaming's on. I've just had a good conversation about our parks and our sporting recreations for the city. We've got a current resolution on the screen that's been moved by Councillor Hamill. Second, Councillor Tozer. Would you like to talk to it, Councillor Hamill?
Mr. Chair, just to say that the responsibility of good government is to think long term. While we have to deal with today's problems, we can't lose sight of thinking 10, 20, 30, 40 years and beyond. This report that's been brought forward by officers today is really doing that, and can I congratulate the entire team on that. It is, in my opinion, one of the more succinct and aggressive reports of addressing a really important issue. And to the entire committee, I hope you can support this recommendation today and demonstrate to the city that we are making decisions that think for the long term.
Anyone like to talk in favour, support? Anyone against? Put the motion to the floor. All in favour? Carry. General business. Any general business? 5 o'clock at night? No? Meeting closed, 4:57. Thanks, everyone.